We slept next to the torture chamber.
And you could hear it.
Every night. Every time we went out, we were getting in a firefight. And we went out a lot. I just know what I'm seeing in front of me is evil, and I get to take it off this earth.
Welcome to Rodeo Time, the podcast. Dale Brisby here in the house. Our country has been in an intense fight over the last 20-some-odd years overseas, and from that 20 years came some patriots, some heroes, and I have had the honor of meeting some of them. On this episode of Rodeo Time, we get to meet Eddie Gallagher. He had 8 combat deployments. I'm pretty sure they were all, but he goes through, he walks us through those deployments. He tells us stories throughout. He was wrongfully convicted of premeditated murder on an ISIS fighter. Yes, you heard that right, on a terrorist. And he tells that story. He's got an incredible book called Man in the Arena from the Theodore Roosevelt quote. I've read it front to back and started it again. So Eddie Gallagher is a war fighter. He's an intense human being, but he is a good dude. And getting to hang out with him for 3 days, I loved hearing those stories that you're going to love also. I'd like to thank Ranch Fuel for bringing you this episode of Rodeo Time. Right now, get 30% off and free shipping. If you use code DALE, D-A-L-E, you get an additional 15% off. That's 45% on ranchfuel.com. Also like to thank American hats. Pull it down, old son. If Eddie Gallagher was a cowboy, he'd be wearing an American. Total Feeds, Rock and Roll Denim, Can-Am Side-by-Sides, and Mountain Ops Supplements. Now, let's hear more from Eddie. I've not ever really had a lot of canned energy drinks. Like
Me, I usually don't. But
they give me a headache sometimes, but these don't. I like these, so they seem to. They've worked. They do it for me.
Yeah, I stopped drinking energy drinks, all that stuff, like 6-7 years ago.
Did y'all have? Didn't they have a bunch over there for you guys?
Oh yeah, well yeah. There's no shortage of that. They got Rippets.
Rippets.
Yeah, that's the official sponsor of the GWAT. Yeah.
Yeah, Rippets. Because I was at my grandmother's. And she just turned 90, and she's always talking about how she never sleeps. And we went out to dinner, and after dinner, we go and we're watching like Judge Judy or something, typical. And after dinner, she freaking opened a Rip It and started drinking it. And I Snapchatted her. I was like, nope, no kidding. You never sleep, And there's no telling what, a Rip It would do to a 90-year-old woman.
Yeah, that's full. That's pretty hard.
And she was like, no, this doesn't keep me up. That's not why I'm not sleeping.
That's not what it is.
I was like, yes, Gigi, I think that's why you're not sleeping. But anyway, a lot of people responded to me, and they were like, yeah, that was all we had overseas. But I'd never even heard of the drink before.
Neither have I until we got over to Iraq, and it was, there's plenty of them. They came in these like those short little cans. So you would, when I was a new guy, like we'd go out and do hits or whatever, and I was in the turret. So you had, in my turret, I had like 2 ammo boxes. One's full of like grenades, and the other one's like Rippets and dip. Because that's what you lived off of.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite as many people like smoking cigarettes like in the old school war movies. It was more just
later on. It's funny, yeah. Not at the beginning, at least in my first couple platoons. The second platoon, yeah, people started smoking because we went to Afghanistan, and so we would go do these hits on bazaars, which is like a big shopping mall in Afghanistan, except it's not anything close to a shop mall. It's like it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's like just dirt huts, but they sell stuff out of them, right?
Yeah.
And then so we'd go do hits there because we were looking for weapons and drugs and stuff like that the Taliban was using. And you end up going into a store that had like cigarettes, so guys were taking cartons and then started smoking there. And then as the war progressed, I saw more and more people smoke for sure. But
so they because they had access to this like cigarettes, they would start smoking just because it was like free or something.
Yeah.
What a terrible reason to start
Exactly.
smoking.
And if they like thought it looked cool, I guess, like, I'm going to start smoking.
Oh, how much? No, they're free. Oh, yeah, I'll start smoking. I guess if they're free.
Yeah, I mean, I saw dudes get addicted real quick, start chain smoking them just because they were bored. And
yeah. Well, my questions are already starting to roll in, but I want to talk about this first. What is
so that's Firecracker Farms.
Firecracker Farm.
It's my good buddy Alex. He started that, I believe, over a year ago. But it's hot salt. It's probably some of the most delicious salt you can get.
Oh,
so you
can
pretty much put it on any. You can put it in drinks. People put it in drinks. It's good. It comes in like he's coming out with more and more flavors.
Guys, this is a normal container. I'm just having a hard time.
Yeah,
because
it is a pain to get.
I'm an idiot.
I think it's stuck in there.
Well, to be honest, I'm kind of I'm off this morning.
You and me both, brother. I think that long day you were waiting around forever. That long day of travel.
Yeah, how about that ride?
Yeah, my brain's.
You were in there on the plane 8 hours.
Yeah, sitting on the tarmac.
Over 8 hours for a 2-hour plane ride.
Yep. That was unfortunately that's par for the course for me. Traveling. There's always something.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Dang. That is kind of
it's got a kick
spicy,
to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like spicy stuff.
Good. There's that one is like so that one's called Pineapple Express. That one's like a second level up from the original. It's not as spicy as that.
I love this container too.
Yeah, man, he did it. I mean, this dude is super creative, Alex.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is this the same one that Rogan was talking about on his podcast?
Yeah. I mean, which was awesome because we sent him out, samples, and you never know. You're like,
right?
I'll just send it out and see. And he ended up tasting it and
gave
Alex a shout out on his podcast, and then Alex called me like a day later and said, it's like, dude, I can't keep up on orders now. He's like, it's St. Rogie blessed it.
St. Rogie blessed it. I don't anticipate that'll be the case with you never know. Yeah, maybe.
You never know.
Everybody check out, what's it called? Firecracker
Farms.
Firecracker Farm.
Yeah. I mean, try it out, look it up, and if you like, especially if you like I try to do the carnivore diet like you do, and
yeah.
I like sauces, but they're not the best for you. So that is like a good alternative. And if you're trying to like cut back on certain things,
because that's where I'll cheat for sure. I find myself on some sauce like every now and then. It just got to change up the taste.
Exactly, that's how I feel. I put like my wife calls me the condiment whore. Like our fridge, like our whole half side of the fridge is just full of different sauces that I use.
Right. Yeah. I've been on this Japanese barbecue sauce lately, and anyway, I know
you're talking about the squeeze bottle.
Yes.
Yeah,
the red top.
Oh yeah, I got a couple of those.
Yeah. And then every now and then I circle back to like some yum yum. But did you eat that chicken?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, anyways, chicken thighs. I've been on thighs more than breasts lately. Some chicken thighs with that, with some yum yum. Anyway, sometimes I have enough little cheats like that. Sometimes I feel like I'm not even on carnivore, and I need to.
That's the thing, though, man. Is like I don't want to be just super strict on carnivore. I mean, I think if you're have a baseline, you're like, okay, you are just mainly eating meat. You can add a little couple things here and there, and you're gonna be all right.
Yeah, you're probably pretty in tune with like the limits of like how extreme a person can be when it comes to like physical, like their diet and.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like that for a long time. I've been, try to eat healthy during my whole career, and
I guess what I'm saying is like how did your time in the military like affect your diet now? I do remember one part in the book where you were talking about Andrea was giving you a hard time or whatever, but you were like Marine, as a Marine, you know, you don't want to be dependent on crutch. Food is a crutch.
Food's a crutch.
I think is what you refer to it as.
That's the Marine Corps mentality that I came up with. You know, I came up in the Marines the first 4 years, and a lot of the training you do, and especially when I went to a Marine Corps sniper school, I lost like 25, 30 pounds because they have a final exercise where you just get one MRE for just a week, and you're humping over hundreds of miles. And
one a day?
No, one for the week.
One for the week.
Yeah. So you learn how to, like, you know, adjust, and you can push your body without food. It's not like good for you, obviously. It's your body needs calories, and especially if you want to get stronger. But you makes yourself a little mentally stronger. If you can, like, keep pushing forward without food. I mean, I know Ranger School does the same thing, but that's the funny thing about buds, like going to SEAL training. It's the opposite. You're eating all the time, because if you don't, because they're running you to the ground there, and you're cold, wet all the time, and shaking, burning calories. I mean,
you would just be done. Like your body would
you
shut
can't
down.
eat enough. I mean, you get done for the day and eat. I remember watching my roommate eat a gallon of ice cream a night. Just,
isn't it 9 months?
It's buds is 6.
6.
Yeah, a little over 6.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta have. Did I hear or see something that they kind of relaxed that? Like the food's not quite as good now as it used to be, or like, is that a thing?
I don't know. I don't know if you mean at Buds?
Yeah.
I think it's the same. I think they still use the Navy chow hall that you run to, and then they'll probably still MREs if during the week or during Hell Week they give them out there. But yeah, the food's the food. It's not like grade A awesome stuff. It's Navy chow hall food, but it tastes like a 5-star restaurant when you're going through because you're so hungry all the time.
By the time you had your first deployment, they were kind of they had set up shop enough that they had pretty good food over there, huh?
Oh, yeah. Obviously in the beginning, there was nothing set up, so you were living off MREs. But then once we got established over there, some of the bases over there, they had TGI Fridays on some of them. It got to a point, where it was being on those FOBs, the big ones, the forward operating bases. They'd have TGI Fridays, Chili's, coffee shops. Dang. And then some of the chow halls over there were, I'd go to it in the States. They had, they were good. But then that's mainly, if you're stationed on that base, but for most of special operations, we're like sort of set aside, on our own little fob somewhere, and we go visit those bases from time to time to get a good meal.
Right.
Yeah.
So, did it end up being 9 deployments?
Yeah.
9 that you did?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about you said you were a young guy in the Marines, on the turret gun.
No, that was when I was a new guy in the SEAL teams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the Marines. So I joined right before 9/11 in 1999. So I did my first deployment with them with a grunt unit. I was in 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, Alpha Company. So we deployed, and that Kosovo was going on at the time. I don't know if everybody remembers that back then, but it was near to the tail end of Kosovo conflict, and we went and guarded an air base. And at the time I was 19, 20. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, all right, this is where we're at. And then after that deployment, obviously 9/11 had kicked off, and then it was like, okay, now it's game time. So we deployed a second time, and that's where the invasion was happening. Got to be, take part in some of that, and then came back. And
so that was to Afghanistan?
That was Iraq.
Iraq.
So we were on a ship. And they flew off the ship to go to Iraq to support the invasion, and that was into Mosul, Iraq. And it was only for a short stint, and then we also did Africa. We did Liberia at that time. That was like a 9-month deployment because we got extended, obviously, because of the the war and the invasion was going on. But after that deployment,
what year was that? That
had to be 2002. 2002.
Oh, dang. Real quick.
Yeah.
So that was like first. Man, that might have been around the same time as my buddy Ross. I was telling you about last night.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. What? When they pulled the statue down, was that in Baghdad when they pulled Saddam's?
That's when they rolled through and finally got to Baghdad. And
was that around that same time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so he was there around that time. He said he was like in the vicinity. They didn't really realize that was like a monumental thing, and like, there would be media attached to it. But when they were pulling that statue down,
back then you didn't have iPhones, nothing. There was no like flow of information like there is now. So yeah, when you were taking part of the invasion back then, it was like you just knew what your little piece of the pie was and what you were doing, but you had no idea really what the rest of the units and what was actually going on, unless you were leadership. And but if you were just a lowly grunt and nobody's telling you nothing.
So that would have been your first like combat type situation.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a pretty hot and heavy?
No. It was
deal?
more confusion. Just because we hadn't been to war yet, and there was a lot of and that's what's back then, even the leadership, a lot of them hadn't nobody had any combat experience. So it was like a first time for a lot of people from top to bottom. So there was definitely it was just the unknown. It was like everybody was going in the unknown, so there was that vibe. But obviously as the war progressed, we got more and more experienced. And
so there weren't just every night missions because nobody knew what mission to go on if there was.
No, for the invasion, it was. For the Marines, and I can only speak to that because that's who I was attached to. The mission was like, hey, we're just going to go in and take whatever section that we're being tasked to take. They just the initial invasion. They just pushed through and it just run through cities to.
Basically, if somebody was still there, they were assumed to be a threat.
Yes.
Gotcha.
There was also civilian populace that was there, but if they're shooting at you, they're a threat. But that was also confusing for a lot of people too, because there was no uniforms that these people were wearing, which if you watch the war movies growing up, the way they depict it, there's one side versus the other, and they're wearing uniforms. Where I think that's where for a lot of people, it was like, oh crap, like these people are dressed just like using the civilian populace to hide behind.
And that never changed, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, that just got worse as the war went on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got more devious in ways that they would use the civilian populace for sure.
So you had 9 deployments. That was your second one, but your first time for combat. But at the time, you probably thought it was pretty. Now looking back, knowing you were gonna have 7 more, you can tell that like that one wasn't very intense. Did you feel like it was intense at the time though?
I think I was just young enough to where I didn't know what I didn't know. I was just like, let's go, and we'll see what it is. It was definitely nerve-wracking. I think everybody was a little scared and nervous just because you're going into the unknown. So it was, I guess, on an emotional side, like it's a little bit more intense because it's the first time. It'd be like the first time getting on a bull.
Yeah.
Right. You're probably like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
It's just 100 miles an hour.
And then the more you get on like the bull, even though you probably have more intense rides later on, but it's not as intense as the first time.
Right.
So that's the best way I can explain it.
Ross was saying, it was wild. Just nobody, like you said, not even the leadership had really ever been in any sort of gunfight.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of experience. It was like onesie twosies. Maybe you had some older guys that were part of the Desert Storm conflict, which that wasn't even like a major battle, and then maybe had some guys that did some other things here and there, but mainly it was the first time for a lot of people.
So running into guys at that point, like, were some of the like special operators or the SEALs at that time, were they seeing?
Yeah, I think they were. I mean, they were doing their own little missions. But I talked to guys when I went to the teams that were part of that initial invasion, and a lot of it was the same. It was like sort of hit or miss. They were doing back then. I remember guys were being tasked with taking down the oil platforms. And then there were guys actually on the ground doing stuff, but you never heard of any like big, huge gunfights or anything during the initial push that the team guys got in. And I'm sure there was. I just haven't, talked to everybody. But I think as the war progressed, it got more and more vicious. And
when was Roberts Ridge?
That
Wasn't
was
that early?
2001, I believe.
Wasn't that early?
Yeah. That was like initial, and that was Afghanistan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because Afghanistan first, then Iraq for a while, then back to Afghanistan,
and then on we went.
Right.
While the politicians filled their pockets. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when did it get more consistent? Which deployment did it?
I mean, when I got to the teams, like I got really, really lucky. I got to go on, right when I was a new guy, I went back to Iraq, and that we did a lot of direct action focus. So we were going out and hitting houses every night, and that was awesome. I mean, that was fast paced, and you're actually going after bad guys. Getting intel packets on guys and going out and after and getting them. And there wasn't like, thank goodness, like a ton of gunfights. And that's the thing. Like if you, especially for our job, if you're going out at night and getting in gunfights every night, trying to do an operation, then you're doing something wrong. Because usually, like a victory is to go out, get the dude, or smoke a dude, and be able to come back without, really getting into a blazing gunfight. But it does happen. But yeah, during that deployment, I think there was only a couple little skirmishes that we got into, just because we were just running fast and furious into houses and grabbing whoever we needed to grab and getting out of there.
What town were you in that? That
was in Hit, Iraq. It's not about a 45-minute drive out of Al-Assad, which was a big base there. We spent our whole time in that AO. But even then, we were traveling all the way across Iraq. We would drive 6 hours to go hit a target and then drive back. Yeah.
Was that part not sketchy? Like that would.
Yes, that is more. And thinking back then too, because the IEDs were really coming up at that time.
6 hour drive time.
Yeah.
Like
so you're
one way.
Yeah. Yep. You'd be out all night, just to go hit one or two targets. But then back then too, you would go hit a target, and sometimes you'd get some information, and there'd be like two more follow-ons. Like you go hit two more targets in that same night. So you could be, out on. And we usually were. So we'd go out at, midnight or whatever, 11 at night, and then you'd come back at 6, 7 in the morning.
And one time I just drove to California. I had to deliver a van, and just from here, just going through, you get to that part of just the desert where it's 40, 50, 60 miles between towns. And there were just a couple of spots where it's just a lot of shoes on the highline wires, like some pull-off stops, where it's just like, all right, this looks like somewhere where somebody stops to do a drug deal or whatever. And I'm by myself and driving this old pickup with a van on anyway. It just made me think like, dang, I would hate to break down out here, by myself. But I can't imagine driving across Iraq in the middle of the night, driving 6 hours, because you can't stop. It's not like there's a gas station. It's not like some friendly American's going to stop behind you and help you.
Well, that's not true, entirely true, because we had Blue Force Tracker back then. So pretty much if you were going out on an operation, everybody was operating that was off this Blue Force Tracker, so they could see, oh, there's a unit over here that's operating. So if something did happen, you could put out, a call on the radio like, hey, we need help, or QRF.
How quick could they get there?
No, I mean, no, it's not. Yeah, it's not like AAA. It's they're coming when they're coming. But you're as a platoon, you're self sufficient. So you're going out with everything. I mean, gas. Everybody should know. Knows how to work the vehicles if the vehicle breaks down. I mean, we train so heavily before we go and do these deployments, and we go through different sections of training, and like that one of them is mobility, like just vehicles for 2.5 weeks, where we just practice driving hours and hours and then fixing the vehicles, living out of them, learning how to pack the vehicles properly to be self-sufficient. So, I mean, when we go out, we're pretty confident, like whatever, let alone being blown up by an IED, then, okay, it's like, all right, we got to figure something out. But if a car breaks down or something goes wrong, we can fix it and keep going or tow it.
So was there, I guess, talking about that, was there ever a time where something did come up on a drive, like you're nowhere near your target destination?
Oh, yeah, we had vehicles flip. We actually, like at one target we hit, we were coming back, and we actually had some POWs in the back, and one of the Humvees, the front Humvee, we were going over this bridge, and it flipped off the bridge, went upside down, and so, yeah, we had to deal with that.
Dang.
Yeah. So, it's little things like that pop up. I mean, thank goodness we never got hit by an IED on that deployment. I mean, that happened a lot.
Yeah, that's when they kind of started.
Yeah, I mean, they had started a little bit before we got there, but, yeah, it just kept ramping up.
Yeah. And so your next couple, I guess you probably stayed in Iraq?
No, the next one was to Afghanistan, and that one was super, I guess, intense as far as firefights. That was like going out more. Every time we went out, we were getting in a firefight. And we went out a lot, so that was. And the tactics and the way we did things were different because that was a more open terrain, whereas Iraq's very urban, so it's just a different way of doing things. But yeah, the second deployment was to Afghanistan, and that one was it was fun.
So you had like a mentality probably early on, I imagine, like you avoided leadership roles so that you could continue to just be a shooter.
Yes, I did my best to try to. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that was like maybe your mindset early on. And tell me about how that developed. Like what made you think, was it early on that you were just like, this is where I want to be. I'm happy right here.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of guys go through that where, you start off as a SEAL doing exactly what you want. You're kicking doors, doing the job as a shooter. And the more platoons that you do and more deployments you have, obviously you're going to pick up rank and position. But what I saw, and I think what a lot of guys end up seeing is, once you pick up a leadership role, especially platoon chief, that's pretty much your last hurrah of like, all right, you're going out with the boys, because then you step up into senior chief and master chief, and you're more behind the scenes, like taking a step back role, advising. Which is not a bad thing, but it's if you're healthy enough and you're like, dude, I want to keep doing this job and doing it the way I've been doing it, then yeah, I was like, I don't want to pick up chief as fast as some other people might be picking it up. So I definitely delayed myself as much as I could.
Yeah. I usually end up always talking about this with like any of the military friends of mine that come on, but for some reason in rodeo, I've always been a guy that people will go to get started. I think as a rodeo cowboy, I've always tried to have around me a practice pen. And so, like, I was constantly angling for either acquiring practice stock or an arena so anyways, I was just always making sure me and my guys had somewhere to practice. And I think that's maybe what got everybody like, hey, Dale, I need to get on a bull. Well, anyway, and so it's morphed into this internship program that I have because I live out in the middle of nowhere. And so, I've got the arena and perfect practice stock in my opinion. And so it's an opportunity where, hey, I need employees, and so people will come out to learn how to ride. And long story short, I've, I guess, been blessed with the opportunity to help dozens and dozens of people get started.
Yeah.
With bull riding and bronc riding. And I've seen a lot of people ride for the first time. They're interested in rodeo. They want rough stock specifically. They want to get on. Nobody knows what it's going to be like. And, you know, for the most part, most people aren't going to be a, you know, career bull rider. You know, just the odds are stacked against them. The percentage
it's a rough and tough job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't know if they're going to like it. And if they don't like it, they're not going to last that. Regardless, there's also the kind of people who don't want to do it, but they want everyone to think they do it.
Yeah, the faking the funk, or I know yeah.
They like to have ridden a bull. They don't like to ride bulls.
Yeah, so they'll ride a bull and be like, I'm a bull rider.
Exactly.
Yes.
And, you know, and we've got a lot of skits and, you know, deals, you know, videos that we've made that kind of reference that type of rodeo cowboy that, you know, the bull was always ranker, and if they bucked off, every story has it at right before the whistle, 7.9 seconds, you know, and made up bulls almost that they're riding. And I just feel like there's got to be people like that in the military.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's a mixed bag. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of people, and, you know, it's throughout the military, I guess. But I mean, even in the SEAL teams, where I think you have guys that join that just want that trident, and they go through buzz to get it, and then they really have no intention of doing the actual job. Mm-hmm. They're like, you know, I've made it. This is the pinnacle. Where it's the opposite end of the spectrum, where a lot of us, that trident is like, you have to earn that every day, and the reason we got it is to go to war. Like, that's why we came into the SEAL teams, and that's all we want to do, and train and be the best warfighter that we can be. Like, train to perfection. And so, yeah, you have that. There's a mixed bag sometimes of guys in there, and we call them tourists. It's like, you come in, do your 1 or 2 rotations, and get out, and put it on your resume, and then you can go tell everybody that, you know, you were a SEAL. Great. Dang. But you're really just, you weren't in long enough to actually know the craft. You know, it comes with experience, especially deploying to combat. Right. Because each time is different. It's not, you're never at a point, like, I know guys that have, you know, 15 deployments, but you can ask them too. They're like, you're never at a point where you're like, I have mastered this craft and I don't have to do any more. It's like, if you're at that point, then you need to leave, because each experience when you go over there is different. You can go to the same place, but I guarantee, like, you're going to change your tactics up. You're constantly thinking to evolve how you can best defeat the enemy, because we were over there long enough. The enemy was able to do the same thing. They're very smart, and they learn our tactics, and they learn ways around them. So it's a constant game, back and forth. So you have to be constantly, like, mastering your craft, and that's what the job is. So, having those guys that are like tourists, it sort of sucks, because they're not on the same page as everybody else. But at the same time, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, you apply them where they're best needed until they get out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like with rodeo, obviously the stakes are so much lower. It's just, it's fine. Like, you can be kind of a hobby rodeo cowboy, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, we get, and I don't know, sometimes I never try to prejudge anybody, because inevitably, I remember going to a bull riding whenever I was real young, and I saw this guy show up, and his chaps fit that of someone that, I mean, maybe he got him at a feed store. His hat looked like maybe he got it at a gas station, and just his glove, everything. And to be honest, like, I wasn't mad at him. I was more so just concerned for him, because it's so dangerous. And the bulls that night were going to be rank, and I was like, man, this guy is going to get hurt. And I feel bad. Like I just found myself watching him all night, and I was just like, this poor dude, surely. And at some point it's just like, all right, he's a grown man. He paid his entry fees. He's here.
Yep.
And he goes out and whoops on this bull. Like, I mean, pulls a leg and whoops on this bull. And I've just, ever since then, I was like, all right, I'm not
can't judge a
judging
book by its
any
cover.
book by its cover. You never know. And so since then, I've really tried to be careful of who I think and angle for. Like, all right, he's not going to make it. He is. Because it just boils down to, like, essentially, do they love the fight?
Yeah.
Because there's a small fight, or, it's small in time for us. It's, like, very short-lived, where if they can overcome their emotions, because you get down in the buck and shoot, this bull he's going to turn out, and he's going to buck, and he's going to turn back. So, and there's fundamentals. You go to the front to counteract that forward motion and then they kick, and you've got to meet your hips. So there's these fundamentals that make good bull rides. Well, are you too scared to execute the fundamentals? Because when fear comes in, that's when your intuition shows up. And coincidentally, all those fundamentals are counterintuitive.
Yep.
And so like, because when a bull jumps up in the front end, your intuition is to get back.
When really you should be leaning forward.
When really you should lean forward. And so if you can overcome those emotions, that's the beginning of you making a good bull ride. But you've got to enjoy that fight to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And,
I'm sure you got to have like a passion for it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like if you've got that desire to do it like yourself, then you're going to ignore those intuitions.
Yeah, I mean, I think, doing, like, I guess if you're talking about like getting in a firefight or getting shot at,
yes,
the reason we're able to respond the way we do is because of the amount of training that we go through.
Gotcha.
And I think people think we do all this like sexy, crazy training. It's literally every skill set that we train to, all we're doing is mastering the basics of that craft that we're training to. If you master the basics on everything, then that becomes second nature. So when you actually do get into a firefight or whatever, your natural intuition, and everybody's natural intuition getting shot at, I don't care who you are, you're like, oh shit, like,
yeah,
I'm getting shot at. Your body will kick into fight or flight mode.
Probably duck.
Yeah, I mean,
as if you're going to miss.
Yeah, your body's going to naturally try and survive. And if you haven't trained to that point, like how to respond properly, then your body is just going to revert back to what it knows. And so if you haven't trained to respond to a gunfight or being on a bull, like, it's going to do what it like. So the bull bucks forward. That's why the person goes back, because that's probably inside their fight or flight. They're like, oh, this is probably what I should do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like, no, you should be leaning forward on it. It's the same in a gunfight. You want everything you do to be second nature, because responding to the gunfight, getting on your gun, start firing back, that's like common. You should be doing that regardless. What you really should be doing is moving and communicating, right?
Yeah.
That's how you win the gunfight. Shoot, move, communicate. But if you haven't trained, then your brain is not going to be able to do all three of those things at once. So that's why we train so hard before we deploy and master these basics, because they just make them second nature when we get over there. And then obviously you do have to have a passion for the job. It's one of those things. I'm sure, just like you said, there's that fight on that bull. You're in that, oh, here we go, right? And it's probably exciting for you and for people that love it. You're like, yes, this is what I wanted. It's the same thing if you're in a gunfight. Obviously, you're a little scared, but you're like, this is what I want. Like, let's go. I want to get after it and defeat the enemy.
It's crazy that you probably don't realize about certain individuals. Until, like, you can go through training, you can go through workup, whatever that entails, and getting ready. You fly over there, you get settled in at a base, you talk about missions, like, and you just think this person is just going to be a die-hard killer, and then, like, the actual bullets start flying,
mm-hmm.
and maybe this person you thought isn't, and then vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, that'll happen. And there's no, like, I don't fault those people either.
Right,
because, yeah, getting shot at's not fun. And the result is death a lot of the times, or permanent injury, loss of limb or eyesight. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen. So I think for some people, they're like, and when it actually happens, they're like, this is not what I'm not about this. And I don't blame them for that, because it's like, it's not for everybody. Honestly, you've got to be a little off your rocker to like doing this. It's just the nature of it. So yeah, for those individuals that, they'll go do a combat deployment and then come back and get out. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, hey, I dipped my toe in the water, and not for me.
I think probably, I assume, it's the only thing that would be wrong with it is if they were that individual and then they came back acting like they were Chris Kyle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you have a lot of that nowadays, for sure. There's a lot of people out there faking the funk. And I mean, like I said, it's not just in the teams, it's in every branch. Every unit has their guys that, they're tourists. They come and do their one or two rotations, and then they get out, and then they're preaching to the world that, they're this badass
killer,
name your branch or your unit. And some of them are really good talkers, and some of them got a lot of good followers and have, they're big names. But at the end, like, I think for guys that have done the job a lot, you can hear them talk and know, like, this guy's full of shit. And I think it's, for me, and I know the individuals, there are individuals that do that, and at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what you're doing. Like, you're not dumb. Like, you're lying. You're embellishing. And you have to live with that. I couldn't imagine, like, having to lie about my own life.
Right.
Like, I think that's one of the lowest forms of, it's like, just be yourself, man. Like, be honest and be authentic and be real. But if you're that insecure about yourself, I mean, that has to suck. That really has to suck, to have to stoop that low and make up stories. And so at the end of the day, I'm like, and I'm a believer, and I'm like, at the end of the day, everybody is going to be judged, including myself. And as long as I try and live with honor and integrity and just be as transparent and authentic as possible, then, God will judge me the way he judges me. But it's like, if you're constantly making stories up or doing this and that to gain attention, and I guess what your definition of fame or success, then you're going to be judged at the end, and people will find out. I mean, I think it's only a matter of time before people get exposed. It's like what Cat Williams said this year. 2024 is the year where everything's coming out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it from here. Eddie Gallagher. Be yourself, people.
Yes.
Take the glasses off. Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Cut your hair. No, I know you're not trying to, and I'm not trying to by bringing this up to just constantly call random people out. That's not our intention.
No.
The thing that I just, coming from rodeo, and I'm sure you can relate to this, it's just, I just have the most respect for just the real ones.
Yes.
And like people in the craft, and you watch somebody that's just in the trenches and loves the fight.
Yeah.
And it's so, I don't know. I'm just such a fan of people that, I think that, in rodeo, there's the different events. Bull riding, we've talked about. There's bronc riding, there's bull fighters, and then there's bareback riders, like what my buddy was. Well, like bareback riding, if you get into each event, like bareback riding it is a dog fight, and you run your hand in this really small rigging, and if you're right-handed, that means you need to get off that horse on the right, like the way your hand comes out of the rigging. Well, if you get off on the left, like you're hung up, and like bad things can happen. And so the moment you climb on this horse, there's this thing in your head that if you get bucked off the wrong way, bones are breaking, and you could drag for a long time. And the mindset it takes for a bareback rider to be successful, I think, is just you have to have a killer instinct.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just not, because sometimes you can get bucked off a bull or even maybe a saddle bronc horse where it's just like, you're going to go flying, but it's really just like, I hope I don't land wrong. But in the bareback riding, like it's just so much more violent.
Really?
And the bareback riders, I've always said, the way I've worded it is if I had to choose an event to fight, bareback riders would be the last event of the guys I would choose to get in a fist fight with.
Because that's like the biggest fight is with.
Yes, I don't. You can't just casually ride bareback horses, and you can get to a spot in I think if you're comfortable enough with a bull ride where you might be chewing gum or hell, a guy might even be smoking a cigarette on a saddle bronc or a bareback or a bull. But on a bareback horse, it's just so much of an actual fight. I can show you some videos after this to just demonstrate, but. So just seeing guys get down in the chute, and as a kid, my dad said, you have to go and be someone that your own mother doesn't recognize.
Yeah.
And
that's a good
somebody
quote.
that can do that, like on call, to me, is like a scary individual.
Yeah, there's something off with them.
Yes, there's something
for sure.
off.
I mean, it's the same, but it's like that with any like craft or sport you do that is going to be rough, and there's a potential of getting maimed or hurt. I mean, even these, MMA fighters, like,
yes,
it's the same concept. Like, yeah, there's something off with them. But that's what their passion is. They want to like push themselves to that limit each time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some addiction that goes along with that. It's like, oh, I like the thrill of it. It's same thing with guys who, I think people have a hard time understanding why guys want to keep going back to combat, or like, yes, I want to go on another combat deployment, is because they're like, I want the thrill. There's that addiction aspect to it too. I mean, that's just one little factor of it, but I mean, most of it is like they want to keep going back with their brothers, and making sure that their brothers are coming home. But there is that addiction to it where you get, once those bullets start whizzing, I mean, the dopamine spikes, and you're like, here we go.
I mean, I can only imagine though. That would be the son of a bitch I want with me.
Yeah.
You want, it's just like, whether you should or shouldn't be here, I want the one with me that loves it.
Yes.
Like, that's who I want beside me.
Yeah. The guy that, as you're getting shot at, looks over and just cracks a smile.
And he freaking loves it. Like, damn. Like, because he's not going to leave you out there.
No.
I mean, right? I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody that, and that's how most guys are in the teams. There's the guys that are like the tourists that we're talking about. They're few and far between. Yeah, it's not like a large group or anything.
Gotcha.
But you do have them sprinkled in there, and you kind of know before you go over there.
Yeah,
like this dude. I don't know if I can trust if something hits the fan. I mean, but that's, like I said, onesie twosies, and usually in a platoon, guys are like, all right, these two are sort of like the turds of the platoon. But
betas
in a SEAL platoon, they'd be considered betas, or just not trustworthy, as far as if you don't have the trust of the guys that you're going to do the right thing. Because in a platoon, you're there, like everybody goes out in body armor, right? Mm-hmm. We all wear that body armor is not for you. That body armor is to protect the guy to the right and left of you, and he should be using his body armor the same way. And that's the way it works. We're there to make sure the guy to the right and left of you is coming home and you have their back. And that's a lot of responsibility, because each guy has to know what they're doing, what their position is. And
that's something you train with also.
Yes. Yeah, we train together.
Meaning I guess just like the selfless side of it. I mean, or is that just something that's understood?
It's something that's said, for sure, to be selfless, so that you're going to give your life for your brother, but it's not something, I even myself, like, take Mikey Mansour.
Exactly. That's where I was going with that.
I don't know, like, I couldn't answer that 100%, like, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no, what he did is beyond, like, any heroic action I've heard of. He's the only one.
You can't train for that, right?
No, that is a character trait. That is not something that you train to, and you're just like you're like I talked about. Your fight or flight kicks in, and then you're like, oh, this is what I do. That was deep inside him, like a character trait that he had, to where he made that decision on his own volition, like not because, oh, this is when a grenade is thrown on a roof, this is what I do. He made that conscious decision right then, and he was the only one who had the out.
Yeah,
he's the only one who could have escaped that roof and not got hurt. So he made that decision on his own volition to jump on that grenade, which it's doing something like that is, unimaginable. Like and that's why I said, like, I don't know if I would do that in that position. You don't know until you're in that position, I guess. You would like to think. I would like to think I would, right?
Right.
Yeah, but in reality, I've been in situations, not as, crazy as that, but in certain situations where, yeah, you don't know.
See, the thing, it's just so knee-jerk. To me, that would be one. It's just there's no time to think about it. Yes, if given an hour, I'm sure a higher percentage of people would be like, all right, in an hour, I'm going to go, and I've got to, and I'm probably going to die. Like, I got to go help save these guys. Like, we're on our way to save someone, like you've just got that prep time. But just the fact that happened and just he's just got, in the amount of time it takes to process what's going on, he's already, doing the selfless act. That to me is what, in that flicker of a moment, like if somebody's about to get hit by a car, like if there's a civilian version of that.
Yeah, and you jump out in front.
Yeah, do you jump out in front of the car to push them out of the way? And I don't know what I do. I know
I would like to think I would,
right.
But then again, you don't know until you're put in that situation, so you can't say 100% for sure that I would do the same thing, and I would never like give myself that much, like, oh yeah,
credit.
Yeah. You know what I mean? That what he did is the ultimate heroic act. And which is why he got awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously for it. But that's like, one of the top tier heroic acts right there, to save the other guys on the roof that were with him.
Yeah. Yeah. That I was telling you, I started off reading Lone Survivor and then Service. And obviously in that book, Marcus talked about that story. And I think about that all the time, just in the context of what we just talked about. Like, man, I don't know, like, if I would be a good fighter at all, but I really don't know what I would do in that instance, and I hope. But
that's what's cool about that instance, and like you said, you think about you read the story and you think about it all the time. You can use that as a guide in your life, like, hey, should I do this, or like it could be a small decision, but be like, all right, well, this guy jumped on a grenade, to save his friends. Like, I can make the right decision here and do this. You know what I mean? You can use those little stories as a guide to push you in life, to propel you forward in the right way.
What were you around Mikey, or were you over there?
He was in the Buds class ahead of me, in 250. So no, I didn't deploy with him or anything. We knew, like, when during Buds classes, there's usually like 3 classes. At least back then, there was going at the same time. They're just in different phases. So you become friends with the guys in the other class. You see them here and there, but I wasn't like super close with them.
Or did you see any of the same guys? Was he not with Jocko when that happened?
He was in Jocko's task unit. At Team 3, but Jocko wasn't out that day.
Right, but
he worked. Yeah, he worked for Jocko.
Gotcha.
And then you just had on like JP, right? So that crew was I think it was Task Unit Bruiser. So they all worked together.
Did that happen? Did Mikey's deal happen in Ramadi?
Yeah.
Had you spent any time there?
No. So we came in right after them. So when Mikey was killed, we were going through workup.
Gotcha.
And we were getting ready to, I think, relieve them in Iraq. So my sister platoon went to Ramadi.
Gotcha. So what were some other guys that had just that look that, I guess I'm just curious, like who for you, I can imagine you were maybe that kind of inspiration for some guys around you. Who was maybe some inspiration that you feel comfortable talking about that, you know, you could look over in a firefight and there is a smile? Like, were there some guys that just kind of encouraged you to be the SEAL you were?
Oh, for sure. The peers that I came up with, I'll say his name, Travis Newby. He's one of my best friends. He just retired. And then Dan Pearson. Like the guys that I came in with and we were new guys together, I couldn't have been like more blessed to be around those individuals. Like those are the guys that sort of, they made you want to be a better SEAL all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this, always like this friendly competition of, you know, who can shoot the best, who can do this the best, who can do whatever craft we're doing the best. And so you're constantly made you rise to the occasion, you know, and you'd fail a lot and you'd like, well, like he beat me or whatever, but that's what makes you better, is being able to constantly test yourself to be amongst your peers. And yeah, you're going to fail, but at least you tried to be the best, and then you just don't stop trying. And so, yeah, I had that first platoon, 2 platoons of guys that I was surrounded with. Brad Kavner, who's no longer with us. I lived with him, and Aaron Vaughn, who was also killed. I mean, those 2 embodied the job. They lived it. It was not just like, hey, we're off work now. It's even off work. It was nothing but talking about the job and being, you know, how to be a better SEAL. And so I got to come up in the teams around individuals like that, which did, you know, sort of spearhead how I conducted myself the rest of the time in the SEAL teams. And like, you know, and like I said, you run into different individuals. So some people aren't like that. And then, but I mainly that first 2 platoon, the guys that I was surrounded with, they were just top notch, and they all went to do amazing things in the community. I mean, a lot of guys went over to Dev Group or Team 6, and one of my other buddies, who I won't name him, he's Master Chief now, but I mean, he's done his career's out of control. And here's the other thing: the guys that have done the most, or like have had extraordinary careers, you'll never hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're those type of individuals. They will never come out and be like, this is what I did. They did it for the love of the job and for the love of their brothers, like, and obviously for the love of this country. But they did it for their own, like, personal, like, this is what I want to do, and they're humble.
Is there seems like in a lot of crafts like a cycle. You know, I've studied a lot for myself personally, like as a Christian, just pride and humility.
Mm-hmm.
And all I've really gotten done is just identified like how arrogant I am. But watching, you know, the different crafts, it seems like there's like a cycle as you work through like whatever it is you're passionate about, whether it's rodeo or UFC, or I can assume UFC, or maybe being in the military, but like where in the very beginning, you're obviously humbled because you don't know anything and there's just absolutely nothing to be proud of, you know, and then as you get some training, maybe there's a level of pride, and then you get a little experience, and then there's this big jump in pride. But it seems like the kind of guys that maybe your Master Chief friend, like it seems like I can just assume after having probably several, if not double-digit type deployments, like there's like a circle back to this humility of like, I know in rodeo, it's almost like after you go through it all, it just brings you all the way back down to the bottom where you realize just a lot of things about
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's got to play a role in being in the military.
Yeah. I think everybody, especially the career guys in the teams, everyone's sort of on their own journey, like, especially if you stay in, you're going to break off from your original buddies and go do whatever, more platoons or go do things in different teams. And, I think everybody has their own journey. And then at the end, what I've seen, and this is not like I'm speaking for everybody in the SEAL teams, just from like my buddies that I've seen, there's like a form of reflection that happens at a certain point after you've done like so many combat deployments and this. And I think, when you get to a certain age or, you start doing some reflecting and you're like, one, you're grateful for those experiences. Like, not everybody gets to have those. And you got to do a job that you loved, but you also, I think, as a leader, because most of them are in leadership positions at that point, you have to humble yourself. And the second you start walking around like, I know everything, it's time to leave. Like, you should always humble yourself to like be learning. I mean, and that's the great thing about the SEAL teams is you could be your seventh deployment, you could learn something from a new guy that comes in, right? But you have to be able to humble yourself enough and check your ego enough to be like, hey, show me what you just did there. I'd never seen that before. That's awesome.
Right.
And I think there's some people that have a hard time doing that. Some people that are insecure, especially when they get into leadership positions. They're sort of scared to show their ass a little bit. So they shy away from being authentic and transparent and sort of vulnerable. But I think, they get exposed eventually, with whatever weakness they're trying to hide, it's going to come out. But I think, a good leader would tell his guys like, hey man, I've been around the block. I don't know everything. I'm going to need your help on some things and making decisions. Like, not I'm incompetent, but hey, and like I told my guys when I was in charge, I just told them, I was like, hey man, I'm a team guy just like you. I've had just a little bit more experience, but I will make bad calls. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. So when I do make a bad call and it, I was like, please just do me the favor of executing that bad call the best way we can, instead of being like, hey, this arguing back and forth. I'm like, and then we'll fix it afterwards. And it's just, little stuff like that, I mean, goes a long way too. Because then I think the guys that work for you can be like, oh, okay, this dude is not, fake, or he's not, putting on a front. He's just being authentic and ask. And it is also giving the guys that work for you the flexibility to actually step up and maybe take charge of some things, right?
Man, I was just picturing, I've always kind of wondered what it would be like watching movies, and that's it. You're talking about being on the turret, and that's like in a Humvee, you're out the top of it with the gun. Like, is that as just mind-blowing as it looks like in the movies? Like, it seems like just the most vulnerable thing. Like, as a new guy, like,
I wouldn't call it mind-blowing. It's
hopefully not mind-blowing. Pun intended.
It's fun. I mean, especially as a new guy, dude, it was awesome.
Was it?
Just hauling ass down the road at night, and we're blacked out, so no lights. Everyone's on night vision, driving on night vision. And it's cool. Like, you're in that turret and you are the first line of defense for that convoy that you're in. You're like, this is my job, is to engage whatever I think is deemed a threat, or if we get attacked. It's fun, but it can be miserable at times too.
It seems like that's the guy out the top of the car, right?
Yeah.
On the gun. Okay. Because it seems like
he's definitely in the most vulnerable position.
Yeah. Yes. It's like every night when you come off of that, it's probably just like, whew. Like, you just like, all right, I mean,
when you're going through urban environments. So like, yeah, if you're going down and we're going into a city and there's tall buildings that you're on both sides of you, and you know that at any moment there could be a sniper or people up there to shoot down into the turret. Yeah, that's when, it's a pucker factors there. Like, oh, please, don't shoot me. But it, it's a possibility.
I just imagine that would be something that would just like you got to come out of that with balls of steel.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think the mindset that when you deploy, at least for me, you just accept death before you go, before you take off. It's like, and I think that it's the sooner that you accept death, and that you're gonna like, hey, I'm gonna die on this deployment, the easier the deployment is.
Yeah,
because then you're not worried about every little thing. You're like, I've accepted the fact that I could possibly die at any moment. And for me, it just gave me the freedom to actually think and do the job and not be worried about every little piece of trash on the side of the road that could be an IED or this or that. I was just like, well, if it is, it is. But, and it's not like saying, and I'm not saying we just go over there and just like, well, whatever, we're going to do whatever because we're going to die. No, we mitigate as much risk as possible going over there. We plan very thoroughly to make sure that nobody dies, but it's war, and the reality is you can't control it. It's just, shit happens.
So is that one of maybe the factors that helps a guy be a little more of like what we were talking about with just that fighter, the guy that enjoys the fight?
Yeah.
Is that one of those small things maybe they've accepted
that they're going to get injured? Like,
yeah,
I know what I'm getting into. I know the consequences, and I want to go anyway.
Right.
It's that mentality. I think, like you talked about, people coming here and wanting to try bull riding, and they're like, and they get on, they ride one bull, and then they're like, no, those aren't
yeah.
They're
trying to get home.
They effed around and found out, right? It's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But then you have the other individuals that come and try it, and they're like, yes, this is what I want.
This is what I was made for.
I do understand that I could get hurt doing this, but it's worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze to me.
Which, so tell me about, like, I guess maybe now we're at the middle deployments.
Yeah.
Like I think you said your third one, you're a team guy.
Yeah, and then
and then like 4 and 5. Are you back in Afghanistan or in Iraq?
Afghanistan and Iraq. Just kept bouncing back and forth. And then and like in the teams, that's if you're, I got very lucky to be able to do that many in that span of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, people call it like, oh, it's luck of the draw, what you get, or not. I had enough experience to be able to position myself in places where I'm like, I know, like, these guys are going out to a dangerous place, or these guys are going back to Afghanistan, so I would do my best to get onto that platoon or whatever. And it is luck of the draw at times, but you can find ways to position yourself to be. That's what you should be doing. And so I was able to do that.
Well, I feel like if whoever's this, this is a broad assumption, I know, but like if whoever's in charge putting names on a list of who's going where, if he knows without a doubt that there's this killer over here that is craving it, absolutely craving it, like it would be almost impossible for him to not put that person on a list of like.
Yeah, but when you have when you're in a community full of those individuals, I mean, it's not like you're,
like you said, there's
nobody that's like standing out like, we need that guy. It's everybody.
Yeah, everybody wants that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So
that's true.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite. It's if you know a guy that's like, that dude's a turd, and I'm going to do my best not to have him in my platoon. That's what you're more worried about.
Gotcha.
Everyone else is pretty much on the same page.
Yeah. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, and then when you're in, like, you're like all those deployments, and there's guys that have double that, but it's just a fast moving train. You're just one after the other. You're never home. You're either training or you're deploying. I did have like a break. I was a first phase instructor for a little bit, for about a year, a little over a year and a half. So that was like a break in between then.
I got a couple more questions. I got to go to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah.
Do you need to go to the bathroom?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'll just stand up and stretch. Boys are talking me into getting on the bull.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cowboy. Check the audio, too. Yeah, Cowboy nicknamed him Birthday Cake. We got birthday cake, cheesecake, and then it goes up from there. Yeah.
The different forms of cakes.
Yeah, so I was thinking, like, you haven't been on as many deployments as you have. So when you, like in rodeo, and I'm sure a lot of different other events, fighting probably too, but when you end up, whether it's from an injury or whatever reason, you take a break and then you come back to it, that first one back always just has like a little bit of like, you kind of got to remind yourself that you can do it, you know? And with you having so many deployments, what was that like coming back, like your first firefight, like on, for instance, your 4th or 5th deployment? Like, oh yeah, I've been shot at before. Like, were you nervous at all for that?
No,
or did you just
it was actually
fall
more
back into
calmer
Really?
than before. And you ever like trying to think, or I guess even like, you know, we'll go back to bull riding, 'cause it's like you do it so much and you're like training so much, and then you might get like overloaded a little bit and you have to take sort of a step back to be like, all right, let me just decompress a tiny bit, and then you get back on that bull and you're like, dude, I got it. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, where I think that year I had off to go be an instructor allowed me to sort of decompress and just, you know, from the combat deployments I did before, but then it actually helped me. Like when I went back, I felt that much more comfortable. And at that point I was a little senior than some of the guys that were coming in. So I wasn't in a leadership role, but I had the experience to be able to start pouring into the newer guys. But I think it was more of an impact because I wasn't a leader. I was just one of the dudes among them that just had more experience. So I think I was able to pour into guys more in that way. And that was also awesome. To sort of try and lead by example in front of those individuals. But yeah.
What's that called when you make rank based on just your experience rather than, is it a Mustang?
Mustang is a enlisted guy that goes to be an officer.
Right. Yeah. So rather than like maybe you come in like with a college degree and skip to an officer type position.
Yeah, you can make that decision at some point. Like, hey, I want to be an officer and be, you know, go on. And officers and enlisted are completely different career paths. Like an officer doesn't do the job. He might do 2 platoons, and then they're going into these leadership roles where they're behind the scenes. We call it looking up and out, right? They're more strategic, making strategic decisions. So that is why, I mean, I think what guys that want to go the enlisted or the officer route, you know, they might do like 3 or 4 combat deployments. They're like, okay, now I want to be in charge. Because they have that experience and as a shooter and do all that. So now like I can use that as a leader to start bettering the community.
So did you have like a little more, I guess, respect
for Mustangs?
Well, I guess I was thinking, so would you not technically be a Mustang yourself?
No, I was enlisted the whole time. Yeah.
But you had a leadership role.
Yeah, it was
later.
So when you pick up E7, which is platoon chief, actually E6, and I'll try and just break this down real quick. Is in a platoon, you have fire teams, squads, right? So there's usually 2 fire teams in a squad, and you have 2 squads in a platoon. Depending, that could shift here and there. There's leadership roles within that right there. So you can have you can be a fire team leader, and then you can be a squad leader. So you have to move up into those roles, right? But then you become the LPO at a certain point. That's the lead petty officer. So you're not fully in charge yet of the enlisted. the chief is. So you work for the chief, and you are his number 2. So like he puts out the task that he wants done, the platoon to do, and the LPO then manages and conducts, make sure everybody does that task properly.
Gotcha.
And then the LPO will then move up to chief next time. And in the SEAL teams, we are constantly training the guy below us to take our job. That is what you're doing, is trying to work yourself out of a job, pretty much. If you're doing it right. So yeah, eventually I became I was an LPO, then became a platoon chief, and that was the last leadership role that I had. And that's where you're the tactical lead. So you're in charge of the making tactical decisions, and making sure the platoon conducts those tactical decisions that you put out.
So the Mustang type position I'm talking about is someone that would be like an officer above even a chief.
Yeah,
gotcha. That's
yeah, and that's the OIC. So he's an officer who's above the chief, who's overall in charge, because he's an officer, because that's just the way the military structure works, which I think is outdated, but it is what it is.
So I got sidetracked, but you're a first phase instructor, and then that first deployment back, you feel like it was even more calm for your first firefight.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that deployment was at Afghanistan. That was 2011 maybe. Afghanistan was like weird at that time. We were kind of just sitting in place, and there was all these weird rules of engagements that were put on us. It was more like become friends with the populace. That it was stupid. But be friends with the populace, but at the same time, the populace is also trying to kill you. So act accordingly. So yeah, it was different, but I mean, at the same time, it was no different. Like as soon as a firefight kicks off, it's like all that BS is out the window. Then it's like, all right, how are we going to win the firefight? So yeah, I think being one of the more experienced guys helped me not only just like get back in the saddle a lot easier, but I was, it was because I was more focused on like bringing those guys up too. So there was really no time to like think like, oh shit, do I still have it? I'm like, no, I got it. But I'm also, now I have my responsibility is to make sure these guys have it.
Right.
And pour into them.
So in Iraq, it's more like just modern in the city type fighting. Is that what your experience in Afghanistan was like, or was it?
No, it's like more urban, or not urban, more open terrain. So, and it would depend on what the objective we went and hit. Like, so like we go hit these bazaars, and sometimes those bazaars are massive. And so
what's a bazaar?
Oh, that's the best way to describe it. I guess it's like a Afghan shopping mall.
Okay.
It's like rows of mud huts and like, what are they? ISUs we call them, but I don't know why I can't think of the freight boxes, right? They'll have those.
Yeah, shipping containers.
Shipping containers. I don't know why it's like drawing a blank on that. But yeah, they'll sell stuff out of those, and there'll be like rows of them. So sometimes those can go on for a while and like have different alleyways, and you go hit villages that are, everything's very biblical, like mud huts and everything's mud roads. So, you can get into a close contact there, and it can be a little frustrating because then you're running around through all that. But a lot of the contacts that we got into were, 300 yards out, and so you're just tossing freedom seeds back and forth at each other,
right?
Trying to see who wins. But then we would, you can navigate and just flank them, and that's the fun part of it is like, okay, they just started the gunfight. Now let's show these dudes that they just mess with the wrong people. And
yeah.
And at what point, you talked about them getting savvy, like at what point did you really start to notice that they were wising up to your guys' tactics?
Oh, they knew. They knew.
Would they know then that you're going to try to flank them?
Yeah, or they would try and flank you. So they were also well versed. Some of them, depending on the fighters that you were fighting. But if you're fighting some experienced Taliban dudes, they could maneuver as well. So that was, early on, dude. That's you knew going over there, the Taliban, they weren't just some chumps. I mean, Afghanistan's been at war since the birth of Afghanistan. I don't know how long. So it's those are seasoned fighters regardless, a lot of them. And then they were also getting foreign fighters to come in and help them out as well. But then you would also go hit targets where it could be just some farmers that are like protecting their crops or whatever, and they start coming out and shooting, and it's unfortunate. It's like, well, I kind of understand why they're doing it. We do the same thing here, but at the same time, it's like, well, you just you done messed up shooting at the wrong people, and so and those guys are not as proficient, obviously. But you would know the distinct difference, especially in a firefight. If you started seeing them maneuver or doing some of the same tactics, you're like, okay, so these guys sort of know what they're doing. And then they would also use, they knew our rules of engagement. They knew what we could and couldn't do. So to give you an example, like we're not allowed to shoot at mosques, right? Mosque is like a safe zone for
sure,
because of the religious implications and all that stuff. Well, where do you think all the Taliban would fight out of? The mosque. They would all so they knew how to manipulate and do certain things, and they knew that we couldn't shoot them if they didn't have a weapon in their hand. So they would just place weapons throughout, So you just see a guy walking, and then all of a sudden he has no weapon. He ducks behind a wall, and all of a sudden he's up with an AK spraying, and then he puts it back down and continues to walk. And so that is, if you shoot that dude without a gun, then you could possibly be getting charged. So it's they knew how to manipulate our rules of engagement and the laws that were put on us. They're not dumb. And then they got a lot more intelligent with their IEDs. Those just kept evolving. And then, it's my last deployment was like it was the culmination of all of that.
Really?
In my fighting ISIS. I mean, they had drones. I mean, it was a legit 360 environment. And they were decent fighters. I mean, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, that's wild, because, I mean, he spread it out over 20 years, and obviously they got to learn something.
Yeah, everybody did. Everybody evolved, both sides, in that 20 years.
Right.
Obviously, we just evolved faster and quicker and with more technology, but
was there ever a time when you felt like, all right, maybe there's more guns, or maybe they just have, somebody on your side made a mistake, but did you ever really feel like tactically they were just like, oh man, they outsmarted us here?
Not during like any of my, maybe when I went to Mosul the last time fighting ISIS. Yeah, there was some times there where you're like, oh shit, they got the better of us on this. Like, that's because of the rules that were put on us. We weren't allowed to do certain things or move certain areas. So ISIS would take advantage of that and be able to flank or take up those positions that we would like to take, and sort of get the better. But at the same time, they never really get the better of us. It's like if they get to a position that's advantageous, well, then we're just going to call an air and drop a bomb on you. Like, game over.
Well, talking about like the ISIS and Taliban, those guys growing over the span, like what kind of fighter were you in your last deployment compared to the kind of fighter you were in your first?
Definitely more experienced, a little more confident in.
What are like some specific like type pieces of advice you would have given that first deployment, Eddie? Like anything like strategically that like you feel like you really grew in, like, or like an area of battle that like, or do you feel like you had the same guy on the turret was the same guy that? Just real quick, wanted to say thank you for listening to this podcast. Love Eddie Gallagher,
And just don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, whatever you got to do to stay in tune to these podcasts. We try to put them out every Thursday. We've also got Rodeo Time episodes. The vlogs come out on Tuesdays on YouTube. One more thanks to my Ranch Fuel, to my sponsors, Ranch Fuel, American Hats, Total Feeds, Can-Am Side-by-Sides, Mountain Up Supplements, Old Sun, Rock and Roll Denim. Also, yeah, without them, I wouldn't have pants on right now. Thank you, guys. Back to the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, there's you can't, like, obviously the advice I would give my younger self at that point is like, hey, calm down, like, inside, because I was more amped up, I guess, just because you're a new guy, you're trying to like prove yourself, but at the same time, I don't think that's good advice either. I think I naturally progressed the way I progressed, and I don't think I would have changed anything, man. Like I said, I look at my career as I was very privileged, very blessed, and the way I was able to come up in the teams, I don't think I would have changed one bit of it. Obviously, I've been like, hey, the things I was struggling at as a new guy or weak at, I'd be like, yeah, work on that more. But that's, like, I don't think it just progressed naturally. And by the time on my last platoon, I was definitely confident in my tactics. I knew I had put in the time and effort and work to be in the position that I was in, the leadership position I was in. And because I had put it off as well for so long, I had a lot of experience, and I had a lot of experience under different leaderships.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to take stuff from good leaders and stuff from bad leaders I had, and don't apply that and apply this. So I definitely I thought I was, I still think I was ready for that position, and I was very tactically confident. I was experienced, but I did not know everything.
Yeah.
Also, and I think I told guys that. I'm like, listen, there's some stuff that we're going to be learning on the fly, especially with fighting ISIS. It's a different environment. It was a different mission set as well. So I was like, we have never done this, so we are going to have to probably bend or break some tactical rules to get the advantage. But that, I think that also comes with experience. I don't think I would have been able to make those kind of calls, as a 1, 2, 3 platooner.
Yeah. What about, it seems like reading your book, something I respected was how it appears as though you were, it was easy for you, or simple, I should say, to compartmentalize in your mind and maybe your heart, whatever you want to call it, like who the bad guy was and who wasn't. And like, having read the book, it seems like you could kill a bad guy and sleep like a baby that night.
Yeah.
And which I respect and love. At what point, like in your deployments, did you really wrap your mind around the kind of evil you were dealing with that put you in that state of mind?
I think from the very get-go, obviously from my first deployment, it was all based off 9/11, right? So that was like the mindset on the first start of the war.
That's when we got to see their true colors.
Yeah, and we're like, this is payback, and this is what we're here for. Yeah. We're here to let you know that you messed up, and we're gonna kill every last one of you.
Yeah.
But then obviously as time went on, it no longer. This is a whole different subject, but it's like we're not here trying to win. We're like sitting here, and the politicians are the ones making the decisions that don't make any sense. But the evil was still over there. I mean, you saw it. The second you see them use little kids as bombs or as shields, or even disabled Iraqis, they would use, put explosives into them to go, and just send them running at us or running at a unit. That type of evil exists over there. Stoning women to death. that to me is evil.
Yeah.
So therefore, I don't care what political side of the aisle you sit on. I don't care what any of that crap. I just know what I'm seeing in front of me is evil, and I get to take it off this earth because it needs to be taken off this earth. And that's the mindset. It's like, I don't like the reason that we're over here. Yeah, they might be skewed. But at the same time, I'm watching evil take place in front of me, and I get to do something about it.
Man, that seems like a whole nother level of peace. Like, I didn't even think about that. Like,
yeah, it's the way you got to. I mean, I think everybody that fought in the GWAT probably has their own justifications and everything, and that's just the way I looked at it. It's pretty black and white.
Because you watch like a movie, like for instance, maybe The Patriot, where it's one side, they're fighting, and or I'm trying to think of any other movie where there's almost like a respect. Like two warriors can go at it, and maybe if their guns run out of bullets, and they could just look at each other with almost a respect. Yeah. But that didn't exist.
No. You don't respect somebody that rapes kids, rapes women, kills. Like, there is no respect.
Yes.
It's the opposite, right?
So like you said, like,
I guess
forget about the politics.
I will say this. I can find respect though, in like an ISIS and this is the one thing that I do respect about them. No matter how evil they are, how crazy they are willing to die for what they believe in.
Yes.
They are willing to die for their ideology. And so for that, I give them that respect. I'm like, okay, they're
not part-timers.
No, like you guys are ready to get down, but guess what? So are we. Yeah. And that is where that only sliver of mutual respect I'll give them. The rest of it is like, I will kill if I can, I'll kill every last one of you.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll sleep like a baby because I know what you're doing is evil.
I would assume every warfighter with you felt that way.
I'd say in the beginning, and this is my experience, not every SEAL's experience, but in the beginning, yes, it seemed like that was more of the mindset. And then towards the tail end of my career, it seemed that guys that were coming in, and there's different factors involved. There were guys that were coming in more just to be like, I want to be a SEAL badass because I've seen the movies and all the stuff coming out. And then there was guys that had more of a political,
like surely there's
more politically opinionated, and they would bring that into the team room. And I mean, just my last deployment, I had guys like, oh, I disagree with what we're doing over here. I don't believe in this war. And you're like, and here's the thing. I used to be completely taken back by those comments. Like, what what are you doing here? But I had time to think about it. I had 9.5 months to think about it when I was sitting in prison. It's not really their fault either. There's a generational gap, and the way I break it down, like Vietnam veterans, they can sit there and you could talk to them now, and they can tell you the stories of why they were so passionate about being over there and doing this. I will never understand that because I wasn't there, or I wasn't alive during the time, obviously, but it's just, I wasn't part of that. You weren't part of that generation. And so these guys that were coming in a little bit, 20-year war, I mean, there were dudes coming in near the end of mine that weren't even born during 9/11.
Yeah.
So they don't have the same, I guess, drive as a lot of us old timers I'll say old timers, but
2 or 3 years old, and and
it's no fault of their own. They don't. It doesn't hit them the same way as it hit the rest of us because we were either in the military, or a lot of guys were in college or just out of high school, and they're like, I want to go fight and serve and get payback. So and then as the war went on, it got political and corroded, and there was all these opinions on whether we should be there, shouldn't be there. So these kids that were raised in that, and they're getting, and plus the iPhones, so they're getting information all the time. So they have their own opinions and beliefs.
I just can't imagine somebody walking into, like you said, a team room with the mindset of, well, these people, as in the Taliban or ISIS or whoever, these people have rights too.
Well, yeah, you have bleeding hearts in there. You'll have some bleeding heart dudes that are like, and you know what? God bless them. I guess that's a good quality to have. I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised by, my mom is a hippie, like at heart, like love everybody, respect everybody. I was raised that way. My parents were Democrats. So I do understand that. I think it's a good train of thought. I do think, like, yes, we should all, if in a perfect world.
It can be used for a good.
In a perfect world, that'd be great. Like, we all loved each other, but that's just not reality. And that's not the reality that I came up in the military. So to have that mindset, to join the SEAL teams and still have that mindset, it's like, homie, you're in the wrong profession. Like, go.
Well, like for you talked about, I'm about to say something, it's going to get even darker, but you talked about on Sean Ryan, like some of the things you saw in Mosul.
Yeah.
That's your seventh, was that your seventh deployment or eighth, somewhere in there? And kids' heads.
Yeah.
On spikes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so for you to come back home and now you're in a team room and somebody has the mindset of like, they're people too. Like, and you came off of a deployment like that. That's where it would almost just be downright offensive, But I think you sound like you've got a more mature.
I've had a lot of time to work through it.
Mindset of like, like you can be patient with this young person, but to me it just pisses me off. And it's I don't know.
But it's also a lack of knowledge or lack of experience.
They don't have the perspective you do.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I get it. Like, you want to think like that, but you bring up a good point here. Like, on that deployment, I had guys that had never been to combat, and some of them were some like bleeding heart, like, we're here to heal the world and do whatever. And then we got over there. That was their first combat deployment, and there was some gnarly stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like Mad Max world. Like, there was dead bodies all over the place. And like I said, we'd watch women and kids get mowed down. That's a lot of trauma to take in as a newer guy or a guy that's never been on a combat deployment. That's like, to see all that, and we hit the ground running. It was, so I think that was just too much for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reasoning why they sort of freaked out, like flipped out and started, coming
Turning
after me, because they were definitely traumatized by it. I think they weren't expecting to see that much evil in that short amount of time. And then, by the way, going out every day and possibly getting smoked by some IEDs or drones or whatever. I think it was just they were overwhelmed, and I don't know what, like, as a leader, like I was having a hard time, like, how do I sort of guide them through this process, but at the same time staying busy and doing the mission, right? Staying focused on the mission. Yeah, and it was just it was a hard position to be in as a senior enlisted dude, but then trying to understand what these guys were. Why are you here? If you don't want to do the job, then leave. Like, this is a volunteer program.
So, what for those of you listening, we're referencing, one of the I guess the reason you wrote your book,
yes,
Man in the Arena, and your seventh deployment. You guys, you could listen to the podcast on Sean Ryan's show to go into detail. Andrea, your wife,
and my brother,
and your brother, like, had your back this whole time. Anyway, he gets accused of killing a terrorist,
premeditated murder on an ISIS terrorist.
ISIS fighter, and served 9.5 months in prison, and it was just this long drawn out deal. I watched it unfold from the moment I heard about it, which I think when I heard about it, you were already in prison. And so anyhow, I pre-ordered the book, read the book, but that was so for those of you listening, read the book, listen to the podcast with Sean Ryan. It really goes into detail about just and we don't have to go into all those details here.
That'd be that's
too. We don't
another
have
5-hour podcast,
7 hours, But I guess that's part of what made me ask you the questions about like guys with that level of fight, because it seemed like that deployment was that maybe the highest tempo of operations that you had at that time. Or were there other deployments where you really were?
Yeah, there was a couple deployments that were sort of near that pace.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. That wasn't anything. I mean, it was definitely probably the gnarliest one I've been on as far as the atrocities and everything that we would just see on a daily basis, because it was just in front of our face constantly. But it was no different than, you're living in crappy conditions and you're getting to go out and fight the enemy every day, and that's how previous deployments, some of them had been. So I was comfortable with it.
So you're with some guys that maybe had not been on.
Yeah, they hadn't had any combat experience.
Like we had talked about earlier, they haven't figured out whether or not like that's like something. They're maybe not the guys that are addicted to it and smiling during a gunfight at you.
Yes, and so that the way I explain it is, we talked about earlier, right? The guys that might go dip their toe in the water, they're like, nope, I'll finish this deployment out and I'm getting out. Like, this is not for me. And I don't blame them.
It's okay.
Great. At least you came out and you tried it, and it's not for you. These guys came out, tried it, not for me. But instead of taking ownership of that, being like, I'm not cut out for this, they're like, I'm not cut out for this because of you. And they pointed the finger at me. You did this to me. It was a very victim mentality type thing, which has plagued our society for a while now. It's like, this is not my fault. Like, even though you volunteered to come do this job, this is your fault for putting me in this position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. I feel like anyone successful, whether it's, the military, UFC fighting, rodeo, business, like a victim mentality is just the absolute worst thing that anybody, you're not going to be a winner.
No.
In anything you do.
No, it's literally one of the weakest things you can do is make yourself a victim. And you listen, there's times when people are victimized, right? Women that are raped, like stuff like that. Like,
victims
you are
exist.
a victim of a violent crime or whatever, but it's also a mentality that you can put in your own brain, right? So I'll give it, like, I could have sat there and whined and complained about what the government did to me, and like, oh, look, poor, like, no, it happened. It was an experience, and I'm fighting back by creating the Pipe Hitter Foundation with my wife. Mm-hmm. That's my way of being like, you didn't do anything to destroy me. Mm-hmm. Now I'm taking what you did to me and I'm going to use it against you, and I'm going to help others in that position. That is not being a victim. That's fighting back.
Right.
And I think that people need to, like, take a step back when things happen to them that are unfair, and first realize life's unfair. That's just, you should have learned that at a young age. And then how are you going to respond to that unfairness?
Yeah.
And there's two decisions you can make. You can make yourself the victim and be a whiner and oh, look at me, woe is me, and feel sorry for myself and feel sorry for me. Or you can be like, you know what? I'm going to overcome this obstacle, and it's going to take a little bit of grit and a little bit of tenacity and drive. But once I do overcome this obstacle, this unfairness that happened to me, then I'm going to use that to help others. Like, that is the mentality you should have in life regardless.
Yeah, so I feel like, okay, so These guys are out there, like you said, they just kind of decide like this ain't for me. Maybe deep down they don't say that out loud, but like instead of just admitting that even maybe to themselves, it's like because
it's hard.
Like this is Eddie's fault.
Yeah,
this is my boss's fault, but in that moment, that's a lot easier to digest. Like than I may just not be cut out for this.
Well, because that's a self-reflection, and that's also an ego check, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, yes, you're not, like, maybe you aren't, and that's okay. But I think there's a lot of pride involved. There's your reputation is everything in the teams. That's like drilled into you from day one at Buds. So if you don't want to get the reputation to somebody that doesn't hack it or can't cut it. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of factors involved where it would be hard for an individual, I guess, to admit to himself that this isn't for me. I think the ones that do are a lot stronger, you know, the ones that are like, yeah I tried it, great, and now I'm going to go do good things with my life. But it's, I guess, you know, for them and being in that position, it is a tough call to make. But to me, I'm like, the call that they did make, or the move they did make, is like the worst possible character trait you can have, which is it's everybody else's fault, not mine. It's that entitled mentality.
I've got two friends in rodeo that I respect and admire. You know, like Jacob Scrawley, JB Mooney. They both of their careers. You know, JB went to the PBR World Finals 15 times. 2-time PBR world champion, went to the NFR after that. Jacobs went to the NFR 10 times in a row, world champion bronc rider. But they both had these like very significant injuries that really brought their careers to screeching halts. Like one was a back surgery, borderline paralyzed. The other one was a neck surgery, borderline paralyzed, you know, like, and, you know, talking to both of them, it's almost even just a little bit liberating. And that's my observation, you know, that they had this thing that was outside of their control that caused them to, you know, they didn't have to decide, I want to get out.
They were taken out.
And I see that, and I see those guys have those injuries, and it, in a weird way, like I'm not trying to minimize their injuries, but it's almost like a blessing that they were excused of the conversation they had to have with themselves of how am I going to quit this, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's definitely a way to look at it for sure.
But then there's other people I see in rodeo, because we don't have bosses necessarily to blame it on, you know, but I see guys blaming just the man, meaning like maybe the judges or the system, the PRCA, like I just, you know, I can't get ahead, and they keep giving the world champs all these extra points, you know, and they're blaming the system. But it's almost just like you said, like, man, I'd have way more respect for you if you would just admit it. Like maybe you don't want to do it anymore, or you don't feel like you're good enough, whatever reason, just stop doing the thing.
Yeah, or if you're going to continue to do the thing, stop blaming everybody else and look at yourself. Maybe you did something for this, whatever decision happened to you that you don't like, to make that happen. And maybe it wasn't a lot, but I'm sure there's some things that you can fix to you know, do better the next time.
Yeah.
But if you get into that mentality where everything is everybody else's fault, and it's probably time to hang it up.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, if you're coming to work or coming to do that job with a negative attitude, and it's like, I better get my way or else everyone's going to pay, you know, I'm going to bitch about it. Then it's like, then hang it up, man, because that's part of the gig.
Yeah.
It's any job that's rough on the body, isn't, you know, intense, is an unfair job as well. Yeah. Unfair stuff happens, or you get hurt and you have to get permanently retired, or, you know, stuff like that. So to have a mindset where everything better go my way all the time is you're setting yourself up for failure. And if you keep having that mindset, you're going to continue to fail.
Yeah.
Until you can be introspective, be like, what am I doing to cause these actions? Because you have to do that. Even when I was thrown, when all this stuff happened to me, I mean, my first thought was, okay, what did I do? What did I do to like make these guys do this? And I had a lot of, time to reflect on that. And, I knew, I was like, there's some things as a leader I could have possibly done differently. But at the end of the day, it happened. It is what it is. And I still, like, even in the 9 months I had to reflect on it, and I took ownership of some things and was like, yep, I could have done this differently. It still shouldn't have happened. Like none of that, should have taken place.
So you guys when it went down, like, you guys clear out, I think you said like 90% of these like 60, 70 fighters. And then the partner force, meaning like the good Iraqis, go in and do their deal. And they bring this one ISIS fighter out that survived. You guys try to help him. He ends up not making it.
Yeah, he expires.
Later on, you get accused of being the one that killed this guy who was on death's door.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, how different is all that conversation? And I'm with Sean Ryan. Like, even if, like you said, like, kids' heads on sticks, they're sending women and children out so that you guys will go help them, so that then they could then shoot you, but then they end up shooting the women and children anyway. Like, everybody gets shot. Like, it's just like pure evil, whatever.
Yeah.
Even if, but regardless, like, what's that look like? Because that's your 7th deployment. Like, what's the landscape had something like that go down the 2nd or 3rd deployment? Like, I feel like based on the culture, like, just
all that stuff was going down, all my deployments. And that's the thing. I didn't change one iota from the time I started working my first deployment to when I was a leader. Like, that's how we conduct business. And we're not over there to hand out apple pies. It's like we're over here to ruin somebody's Christmas, and that's what like, it was so mind-boggling about the whole thing. And to even have my own command, like, well, no one's behind you. You're on your own. And that's what I was told. Like, as soon as I was charged, it was like everybody backed off. And the reason they did it is because everybody knew that I was being falsely charged. Like, if I was being charged, everybody in the community should be charged. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's why everyone's like, well, I'm going to cleanse my hands of this, and you're on your own. I got told by the leadership, you're on an island all by yourself, and you have to swim your way back. Damn. And that's it. Like, no one's helping you.
Yeah.
Except, obviously for my wife and my brother, who are my two heroes. They're the ones who stood up and got my back. So it was, and it was, it became obviously very political. It blew up, and I was sort of used as the reason they did it is because I was used as an example.
Yeah.
The admiral at the time, which was Admiral Colin Green, the community was getting a lot of bad press. Because we had elevated ourselves to America's heroes, which I think was the wrong thing to do. When Bin Laden happened, I think we should have kept that like just another mission and kept going.
Mm-hmm.
But because we were elevated to this, height of like the Trident became a brand pretty much. And then there's only one way to go from there, and that's down, right? When you're at the top, it's like people are going to want to take you down. So the press, any little thing that happened in the community, fight at the bar, or drunk driving incident, which are normal things that happen. Team guys work hard, party hard. But it would make it in the papers. Oh,
right.
Drug bust or this or whatever. So I think when my allegations came across the admiral's desk, he was like, make this guy an example. We are going to hang him out to dry. So it'll set everybody in line, because he looked at my record, and I got this verbatim from another officer that was in the room. He's like, this guy is well respected. He has a lot of accolades, this and this. This will set the tone. Hang him out to dry.
Damn.
And so that's what people don't get, is the institution is part of the government, and when they want to hang you out to dry and make an example out of you, then you're screwed. Like, you have the whole government coming down on you. And the reality is, and this was a bitter pill I had to swallow, is they don't give a shit about you.
Yeah.
No. Like, I think the countries figure that out by now. The government does not care about you as an individual.
Reading the book, like, you're on trial and you don't even take the stand.
No, I was advised not to, for sure, by my lawyers.
So, and they just think they're about to hang you. And I got to ask about that aha moment when their whole case came falling down and they put
Corey Scott, their main witness,
on the stand.
Yeah.
And he admits
to doing it.
To being the one.
Yeah.
He's like, Eddie didn't kill him because I did.
Yeah.
What did that moment feel like? Because for me, just reading the book, like, I had to set it down.
I think I said in the book at that point, it was like, I was already so overwhelmed with just like the corruption and chaos and like of the whole, like, from the beginning to get to the trial, right? I was being mistreated. I mean, the games they were playing were out of control, trying to get me to snap when I was locked up. And then to constantly watch the prosecutors, who finally got caught and got relieved, but he was breaking the law the whole time, and there was no accountability for it. So by the time we got to trial, I mean, I was so like mentally hardened and exhausted at the same time that when he came out and said that, I mean, I was in like, there was definitely a moment of like, what? And I'm just staring at him like, I can't believe, you just said that. But at the same time, I did believe it. I was like,
did you know it?
No. And that's where, did not know it. I knew something was going to be said that was going to be good for me. But I had no idea, because at that point, his lawyers had talked to my lawyers, and I wasn't allowed in the room, which was smart by my lawyers, even though I wanted to be. I was like, what is going on? They're like, nope, you can't be a part of any of this. And I was like, okay. They're like, just know that we're working something that's, going to be good. So Corey did like finally come forward and say, yeah, I did it. And he did. He covered the breathing tube. I mean, it wasn't a lie, but it was just it was a chaotic, like, he was part of that crew. He got sucked into that crew that was going against me.
Mean Girls.
Yeah, the Mean Girls, which is so pathetic. And that's what they called themselves. It's not a name that we gave them. But yeah, and then I think I said it in the book, he came and visited me when I was in prison on his own, and admitted exactly what was going on. He's like, this got out of control. It's a lie. But at that point, I'm like, well, I'm facing life without parole, so I don't know what to tell you. And so I think he, and I'll give him credit, he stepped up and did the right thing.
So your partner force, the good guys in Iraq, if I remember correctly, because I read it when the book first came out, it was like 3 years ago, but like they had no ROE type holdback, whatever. So like if they get their hands on a live ISIS fighter, that dude's getting tortured that night.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and that was without a fact. We slept next to the torture chamber.
And you could hear it
every night.
Like how far?
Like a 2-foot mud hut or a 2-foot wall. There was actually a hole in the house where you could look through and see.
And they're torturing ISIS guys in there.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So you would go.
Which obviously, again, you've kind of got your mind wrapped around the evil of it. Regardless, it's probably still got to play a role on you psychologically.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it had to. Like, I don't care how tough, you're like, oh, I can. It's like you go to bed listening to dudes getting raped by lead pipes and whatever else they're doing to them in there, screaming. I mean, that's a human being screaming in ultimate pain. So yeah, that definitely does have an effect. I think psychologically on it. And I think that was part of the factor too. With some of these guys, I mean, that was a lot to take on.
I got so mad at Catfish the other night because he would not stop barking, and I could not sleep. I was so mad at Catfish, and I just can't imagine. Like, there's only so many pillows you can stack against your head trying to go to sleep if somebody's getting tortured. I imagine. I'm not trying to make a joke of it. I just literally had that thought, like, oh shit, I have a hard time, like, if somebody honks the horn driving down the highway. Like, I'm just not sleeping because I'm a very light sleeper. Are you a light sleeper? Probably
no,
not
man.
after that.
No, dude. I'll tell you, I have a hard time going to bed, like falling asleep. But once I fall asleep, I'm asleep.
If you can sleep while somebody's getting tortured one wall away, I would.
I actually have to like play torture noises now just to go to sleep. So it's
that is heavy stuff. So Craig Scott knows that's that guy's destiny.
Corey, yeah,
Corey. Sorry,
yeah.
Corey. That was Craig Miller was one of the other guys, right?
Craig Miller was the main turd that started this whole thing.
Mean Girl. Yeah. And then Corey Scott. So he knows that's where that guy's headed.
Yeah.
If this guy stays alive for another several hours, which it sounded like maybe he wouldn't even make it to that.
He wasn't going to make it to that regardless. I mean, the dude was on death's door.
And so he's like, "Man, you're about to get tortured. Let me just
end
hold
this right
this
here.
breathing tube." Because what's it called when you do the deal in the throat?
Cricothyroidotomy.
So he could breathe, which you did, right?
Yes, I did. That was the first initial treatment I did to like give him a proper airway. And then, he ended up covering that up near the end because the guy he was done. I don't think even if he hadn't have covered up that airway and we just let him, he probably would have lasted another like 5 minutes maybe,
So given the fact of like the guy being on trial, like Corey had like, what's it called? Is it immunity or whatever?
Full immunity. That's
So
all the prosecutors' witnesses got full immunity.
Because the prosecutors wanted them to hang you. So it's like, say whatever you want to say.
Say whatever you want. You guys will,
a backfire.
And that's like it always brings a smile on my face just because, Corey and his lawyer used that against them and just completely shafted them.
Mad respect.
Yeah, it was good.
Wish maybe it could have happened sooner where you didn't have to be in there for 9.5 months.
Well, unfortunately, that's the system. That's the way it works. It's a nasty game. It's like if he would have came out sooner, and he said it when he was on the stand because they were like, obviously the prosecutors got up and started screaming at him. And they're like, "Why didn't you say this to us a long time ago?" And he's like, Why would I? Like, I just saw what you did to Eddie.
Yeah.
It doesn't give me the incentive to come out and say,
right.
I mean, he didn't say it in those words, but that's like the thought, the train of thought is like, why would I tell you? Obviously, you guys have picked a side and are going to prosecute anybody that kills terrorists. So, no, I'm not going to like admit it to you right there. I mean, it's, I don't know where I was going with that. Lost my train of thought, but
well, just So what did the prosecute? What was their? Because it was over. I mean, then it's over. Like,
no,
how did?
That's what people think. It's not. It was like, and that's the sham that the UCMJ and that whole trial was. So then the prosecutors attacked him and were like, "You're a liar. You're blah blah blah." We're still charting. Like, they still were like, "We're going out." Like, just negate everything Corey Scott said, even though that's our main witness. He's a liar. We're still going after Eddie for premeditated murder. They were grasping at straws like to the very end.
Yeah.
To the very end of that trial. And even like during the where the jury's deciding what to do, like with what they can charge me with.
Deliberate. Whatever.
Yeah. The prosecution got up before they made their verdict, before they deliberate. The prosecutor gets up and is like, "Listen, we know that one guy admitted to it, we can still get him on this. Like, we need to chart. Like, I was the target, and they're like, we still have to get this guy.
Man, how committed.
Oh yeah,
to
I'll give it to them. You know,
a facade can they be?
But it's all about, and again, like the conversation we had earlier about ego, right?
Yes,
and self-reflection. Like, what are you actually doing this for? And a lot of it is ego. It's to win. Like, I win at all costs. It's about protecting the institution of the Navy.
Yeah,
that's all it is. It's like, we have to, even though we know what we're doing is wrong, we cannot admit that we made a mistake.
Man,
because the institution will look bad.
And then they just
kept burying, like, that mindset. And like we talked about earlier, that mindset gets you nowhere, right?
Yes.
Eventually you will crumble. And that's what happened is they kept that mindset throughout the whole thing. And it's like, you dug your own grave, and the more you keep doing this, the deeper you keep digging it, right? Like, it's the perfect example. Look what's happening with Trump right now.
Yes.
That the Democratic side cannot figure out through and I know they're not idiots, but it just seems like through their thick skulls, like, do you not realize the more you come after this guy, the more power you are giving him, the more people are getting behind him, because people see right through what you're doing now. But because of their egos and because we have to win at all costs, they are willing to die on that hill, and it's not going to work out for them.
After he gets elected, he has to make his mugshot his profile picture on all platforms. I will have.
Oh yeah, I got a T-shirt with his mugshot on,
yes.
And it's the best.
I was reading, I can't remember which book, about pride and humility, and it was talking about our mindsets, like someone that might be against you, like maybe politically. So like, you know, we're both Republicans, so like if Biden or somebody, or even Hunter, whatever, like I think it's our pride at work. If let's say we legitimately found out that Hunter, that all of it was a lie, the bad things that he's accused
like
of,
like all
in
that
this
stuff.
hypothetical world.
Yes.
We both know it's actually been proven the opposite. But like, but like, we're watching all this unfold, and then some sort of information, kind of like Corey Scott's information, comes out where it's just like, all of it was a lie. Hunter actually did nothing wrong, you know, outside of some parking ticket type things. Like, in that moment, if we are sad that he wasn't that evil, that is maybe a reflection that our intentions, that we've got a little too much pride involved.
Yes.
And that's kind of, anyways, I'd read that, and that's what made me think about, like, these prosecutors. It's just like, guys, he didn't kill him. This guy just admitted to him. Like, how are you not relieved?
Because
how are they not like, oh man? They should immediately be like, damn, Eddie, my bad.
My bad.
You know, like, sorry for the 9 months.
That would have been awesome. Yeah, no, you did. I'll tell you, the closest I got to, like, sort of, not, I wouldn't even call it like a my bad or an apology, is they called up one of Josh Vrenz, this other dude in the platoon who was a complete lunatic, as a witness. And this dude, it was known the guy is like bipolar, freaking out of his gourd, just victim mentality, like, to the max. And so the prosecutor was sitting next to me, on the table next to me during the whole trial. And so they're like, all right, we're calling up Josh Vrenz. And I, like, looked over, I'm like, oh, and even the prosecutor's like, yeah, and just, like, shook his head. And that's when I knew. I was like, this guy knows. Like,
yeah, he's
he
playing
knows
the game.
This is a farce, but at the same time, he is under orders to prosecute me, and his career depends on whether he prosecutes me or doesn't.
Yeah.
So I'm no longer, and that's what I had to, like, come to the realization. Like, and I really didn't come to this realization until afterwards. It's not about me.
Yeah.
This whole thing is like, it's not me that they're after. It's their own careers that they're after. It's their own, like, the betterment of their careers, how they can take care of their families and this and that. And then, unfortunately, that's the environment that it is. And the second, like, I mean, I don't think I would have been able to have that, mindset at the time, just because at the time it was like, I was like, you guys are pieces of shit for doing this. And I still think what they did was wrong. But at the same time, I'm like, they're in that position and they can't get out of it. And it would take a lot of backbone and a lot of like grit to stand up during that and be like, you know what? I don't believe in this. And I don't think what we're doing is right.
Yeah.
They didn't have it. I mean, these aren't strong individuals to begin with. Like these officers, they're not. They're just, they're sort of nerds that are trying to make their way into law school after they get out, or become lawyers when they get out.
One thing that I did always wonder about that I heard on Cam's podcast with you, though, like your son, he's going into, like, you would still not necessarily tell someone you should never try to be a Navy SEAL anymore. Like, having gone through all the things and being hung out to dry and you're on an island, good luck swimming back. Like, you're still okay with your own son joining the military.
That is, yeah. And I get people do say, like, how can you let him join, especially now under this administration, and then what would happen to you? Here's the thing, man. And my family is like generational military. From the moment I was born an Army brat. The code that was sort of put on me growing up without being put on me, like, it was never like said, but it was like God, family, country.
Yeah.
That is what you live by. That is what, like, those are our values as Gallaghers. That's instilled in us. And you, to serve your country, the one like you love, is an honor. And it should be, and I've never, even with what happened to me, and, even with the 20-year war and like what we're finding out now and this and that, it's still like, this is the greatest country in the world. I don't care what people say. And it is an honor to serve it and to have that respect for it, to be able to, I would give my life for this country to keep it the way it is. So no, I would never dissuade anybody from wanting to join. And my son is no exception. He came out of the blue. Honestly, he was the last person I thought would join the military.
Yeah.
He's very cerebral. He's probably one of the smartest dudes I've ever met.
Yeah.
But when he said he wanted to join, I had a couple frank conversations with him, just as a father, to be like, dude, you know the repercussions of this job, like, not just with the whole crap that happened to me, but even like the injuries and the potential risk of, like, hey man, like this, you won't be the same person, good or bad. It's just the nature of the beast. But he was like, yeah, I'm willing to accept that, and I watched you serve the country, and I want to do the same thing. And it's like, well, how can you argue with that? And so and the one thing I can tell people, and I do understand the argument, like, why would you serve under this administration? Because yes,
that's true.
I truly believe this administration is
the worst in history.
Yes. But there's one thing you can count on in the military, and that's change. That's the only thing you can count on. Change will happen.
Yeah.
And we hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So, I think that hopefully this year we get the right man in office, and then the military will start making its way back to what it used to be. It used to be inspirational. It used to be a place where men wanted to go to, and become better and become like warriors. They don't have that anymore right now. But I do believe that there can be a switch, and I do think it can become the way it was again. We just have to take out all of this woke crap that's being shoved down people's throats, and then obviously get rid of some leaders that don't belong there.
I got a few more just real specific questions. Like 9.5 months. I know you had seen your kids a few times, but like the first time you hugged your kids, knowing that like you weren't going back in, like that had to be just like the most like, all right, I want to stay right here forever moments.
Yeah. Well, the crazy part is, and I wasn't allowed to touch my kids when they came and visited me. I think I was allowed a 1 second embrace. And that's because, and here's the rule.
Like, as part of the Eddie rules?
No, it was probably a little bit in there, I would say, but also because the prison I was in was a sexual offender prison. It was mainly compiled of pedophiles and all that. So they said, so the first time my youngest came and visited me, because my oldest was in college at the time, he came in a tank top and shorts, which I didn't see, but they made him put on a gown, a hospital gown when he walked in. And I was like, why is he wearing this? And they said, because we don't want him exciting the pedophiles here who have visitors. And then you cannot touch him because that will excite the pedophiles as well. That was why I was not able to embrace my kids or like do any of that. So yeah, but then I'll tell you what though, when I was released from prison after Trump had tweeted to let me out, that's when, that first embrace, like being able to just grab them and like, I mean, my wife, my kids, it was unreal. Like
just a hug from like a kid that loves you is just like,
and it's the same hug like after coming back from deployments. Like you are like, I'll tell you what, man, the worst and greatest feelings of doing that job, the combat and all that is exactly what we want. Like it's like, dude, I loved every minute of it. Had the best time, even the ups and downs, got friends killed and all that. It still was like, this is what I signed up for. But what you don't sign up for, or what you don't realize, is when you leave your kids and family on a deployment, knowing that you have to, like, the night before, it's always the night before you leave. I would go to each one of their rooms, and I get choked up thinking about it.
I'm choked up thinking about it.
But you look over
them
even while they're sleeping. I would, and just try and like take it in, because it's like, this could be the last time.
Damn.
But then the feeling when you get back, bro, when you get to like embrace them again and like you're home again, it's like there's no higher feeling. You know what I mean? So I mean, that's the job though. It's like that. It's a roller coaster.
So I forgot about this, and it's like, I think about it often in terms of your story, but while you're in prison, the 9.5 months, like, tell me about the Eddie rules.
the Eddie rules that were in that kept changing on a daily basis, depending on.
So they, like, everybody, like all these guards, all the other prisoners, like everybody's like, all right, we've got 8-9 deployment Eddie Gallagher in here. And essentially just like everybody's terrified of you.
Yes.
So they make all these rules around just the way the whole prison operates just because you're in it.
Yeah. Well, to just give the listeners like a quick backstory of why, is because my command and NCIS, which was the investigative service that was coming after me, would go in and tell the guards to make me snap on Mondays. They'd be like, hey, do something to make him snap. So they had...
Dang, I forgot about this.
So they had something to point at. Be like, see, we told you he was crazy. Because the narrative they were putting out to everybody was I was this psychopathic, out of control SEAL who was just going around murdering whoever I want. Like, it literally, that was the narrative.
Yeah.
And so they were like, we need to, point something out that, like, see, he is. And so... Luckily, I had 2 guards that were cool with me that told me this. They were like, listen, dude, this is why this is happening to you. So everything I did in that brig, so when I first got in there, guys were walking around like in the general population with their blouse, their shirts off, right? They had T-shirt on and their... So I did it. And I would start doing push-ups or burpees, like, to stay in shape in there. Nope. Nobody's allowed to do push-ups, burpees, and you have to have your blouse on. No one's allowed in T-shirts. And then I would do something else, and that would become a new rule. Now you're not allowed to do this because, and the prisoners all knew it. They were like, dude, this has never happened here.
Yeah.
Like, these are Eddie rules. They would take away my visitation whenever they felt like it, or they would deny my legal visits or my medical visits. Like if I had, because I had 2 herniated discs, and I was like, hey man, no, you know, it was all to sit there and to drive me to do something rash.
Didn't they put you in solitary confinement?
Yeah, right when I got in there. So they put me in, like, it was like 4 days. And then they said, you know, we're going to let you in the general population. You're behaving yourself in here. Like, I'm like, well, what am I going to do, dude? I'm in a room by myself. But yeah, it was all done to make me snap, to wear me down. And so I'll give just a brief overview of the prison system there. It's all designed. It's a plea bargain factory. So they'll throw people in there, and under the UCMJ, there's no bail system. So if they want to throw you in there, you're in there.
Yeah.
And you're called a pretrial prisoner. So you're awaiting trial. And so you could be in there for years awaiting trial with, like, no, you're charged, but you're not charged. You know, like, it's insane. So while you're in there, what they do is they wear the prisoners down to where they just accept a plea bargain. Like, listen, do you want to keep doing this? We're going to give you 20 years, 40 years for being UA or for popping on a piss test, right? But then they're like, if you just plead guilty to it, we'll give you 2 years, you know, or something like that. So then most of the guys are young in there, and nobody can afford good legal representation. And the legal representation that you do get from the Navy, which is the one thing they allot you, is like, we'll provide you. It's pretty much the public defender, but it's a Navy lawyer. That dude's working for the system too. So he doesn't have any interest in defending you properly.
Yeah.
Most of the time. There are a select few that probably will, but it's a plea bargain factory. So, you know, I'll just wrap that up into, which is why my wife and I started the Pipe Hitter Foundation. Because I would call her and tell her, like, dude, this is what's going on in here. And I'm watching these young kids who raise their right hand to serve this country, right? And they made a mistake, like they maybe went out and smoked some weed or did something that's against the military rules, and because of that, they're being prosecuted to the fullest, put in prison, and they're coming out as felons. Where I was like, if they decided not to raise their right hand and go to college or do something that benefits them, this wouldn't be an issue. Like, they would be fine. I was like, so there's an imbalance here of the over prosecuting and over punishing. And so I was like, my wife and I were like, we need to do something about this. And also there was a nonprofit that was representing me at the time that almost was doing the same thing, but they were actually very corrupt, and we fired them. We fired those lawyers, got away from that nonprofit. It was,
oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
swapped
United American
Thank
Patriots.
God.
Yeah, but that's why we also started ours. We're like, it's a good concept, and I think that nonprofit started off as a good concept, but like many nonprofits, it became corrupt and about money and everything. So we were like, we are going to start that same thing, keep everything above board, do the right thing. And so, yeah, what we do, we started it, I think, not too long after I retired.
Y'all helped Ben Darby.
Ben Darby. We help law enforcement officers, first responders, and active duty personnel if they're being unjustly accused for doing the job that they were trained to do.
Right.
We step in, we provide emergency relief aid to their families because that's just a stressful time. And then we also raise money for their legal defense, pay their legal bills. And because the one thing I learned, my wife and I learned, is the only rights that you have when you're put in that situation are the ones that you can afford. If you do not have a good lawyer, your rights will be trampled over and over. I mean, even if you do have a good lawyer, like look at what Trump, like they just did to Trump. So then we also advocate for them as well, because what my wife and brother did while I was locked up is they created a roadmap to defeat the media and the government, like all the lies and misinformation they put out.
Yeah,
they made the right connections with the right people in Congress, which are few and far between, and then they also made good connections with individuals that can put out information and do it in a correct manner. So that's what we do now is like, hey, we'll put out the story. So like with the Darby case is one that's, I think he did what he was supposed to do, did his job, was charged with murder, But then the media was putting out that, they were demonizing him.
Yeah. And he was just like
and taking everything out of context.
Saint of a guy.
Yeah. I mean, dude, him and his wife both are like
just the sweetest humans.
The sweetest humans, the epitome of what you would want out of good Americans. They both serve and protect their community.
Yeah.
They love what they do. They're the type of individuals that we're talking about that are passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
And so if America is going to make a habit out of going after individuals that are passionate about protecting and serving their community and doing that job, we are in for a rough road. I mean, we already are in a rough road, but like you cannot take down people like that, because then who's going to be left? Who's going to want to join? Who's going to want to raise their right hand?
No
if
kidding.
They see people that are actually passionate about doing that job and getting crucified, it's like, well, then I don't want to put myself through that. What if I do something and I get screwed? So that's why we created our foundation, is to not only help and protect those people and get them out of those situations, but also to let people know, like, it's okay to do your job.
Right.
Do it correctly. There are institutions like ours out there, and there's other nonprofits that have a similar mission statement, that we are here to make sure you don't get screwed over, and we will be with you to the very end. And we also, while they're going through that stressful time, and this is where my whole story wraps up into what it's just the biggest blessing, right? As much of a nightmare as it was going through it, like I said, I'm a believer. I think God doesn't put anything on your plate that he knows you can't handle, and I know he does things in your life because he has a different plan for you, and it's never our plan, right? It's his plan. He's like,
right,
and you just have to have faith in it. And he had all that happen to my family and I to do what we're doing now, because as people are going through this stressful time, we are able to pour into them advice that we did, like how we handled the stressful situations. And I'm telling you what, it does wonders, man. Like, just because when you're in that situation and you're being demonized, and believe it or not, most of the people that you think are your friends, they'll back away from you. It's just the nature of the beast, because they're like, well, I don't want to get screwed too. You're left alone a lot of the times. And so to have somebody to be able to call and talk to and either vent to or just get some reassurance that everything's going to be okay is huge. Yeah. And so, like, just being able to do that right there is a blessing. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't gone through that whole nightmare and became out victorious.
Do you feel like there was any, whether they admitted it or not, but just the administration, the Navy, just like any bit of like, maybe they rethink the way they might go after the next guy?
Yeah. They actually called it the Gallagher effect in the Naval Special Warfare community. I think I made a part of the publication. It's in the Naval Special Warfare pub. At least that's what I was told. But pretty much the Gallagher effect, what took place after mine was, well, one thing, there was 3 other SEALs that were supposed to be being prosecuted after me, and it was for different scenarios, but same type of like war crime thing.
Yeah,
those cases got dropped.
Dang!
Right off the bat, which was awesome, because one of my very
good
friends
the
was
Pipe
one of those
Hitters
guys.
Foundation, huh?
Yeah, well, no, they do like and that's what was cool. And then also what was happening and taking place is the guys in the team saw what happened, and they were, a large majority of them were completely against what was happening to me. They were pissed, but they had to remain silent. It's like they couldn't speak up. Guys were speaking up and getting punished for it. But because when we came out victorious, then when the command was trying to go after other SEALs, and those SEALs would lawyer up, be like, nope, I'm getting a lawyer, because that normally doesn't happen, because what you're told is to trust the system. The system's not going to screw you over. Trust the system. Let this play out. Now, I think guys saw exactly what happened to me, and they're like, I'm lawyering up, which then pissed off the command, because then they have no power anymore, really. Yeah. So they called that the Gallagher effect. Is people started standing up and being like, nope, I'm not going to take what you're giving me.
Just one or two more things. Well, tell me about your faith through that whole process. Maybe just like as a SEAL, but then like through your deployments, but then like how it sounded like it even got strengthened the most during your time
for
in
sure.
prison. And
yeah, I mean, I grew up Catholic. My dad's a strict Irish Catholic. We went to church every Sunday, no matter where we were. We lived in Asia most of my childhood, but my dad would always find a church to go to, no matter. And so I was raised in that fashion. I believed in God, Jesus, but it was also I was told to.
right,
Like I had no concept of like, a relationship with Christ. I just was like, yep, this is what my parents do, and this is what we do, and and I did see the benefits from it because it's like a family oriented and like there's good values and stuff that come with it. And then it wasn't until when I married my wife, she's a very, very like devout Christian believer, and that was like before we got married, that was one of her stipulations. She was like, we have to be on the same page as having a relationship with Christ. And of course, I'm all about it, and I did, but I didn't know, like, I didn't know what a true relationship with him was at the time. And so I was literally I was like, I want to marry you. And so, of course. But we'd go to church every Sunday, while I was when I was home, and take the kids there. But and then deploying overseas, obviously you pray before. I would say a little prayer before every operation. Sometimes we would have like really awesome chaplains that would come out and pray over the whole platoon before we went out. So there's always that element to it.
Was there prayer in some moment? I'm sure there was, like in some of the longer firefights.
There's no time like to like pray during the firefight.
There wasn't stuff that like stretched out over hours where you have like lulls where you're just like I don't know how this is going to end, or was most of your stuff like start and end?
It was. I mean, some would last a couple of days, but it wasn't like you never had the feeling like, oh, we're gonna win. We were always like we're gonna win.
Gotcha.
I mean, there's moments in there where I've been in situations where you're getting shot at from all three sides, and you're behind some sandbags with a couple buddies, and you're just waiting for the one round to like plink you, and all you can do with that, and that's where you're looking at your buddies laugh, like you're laughing hysterically because you're like, this is the situation we're in, and like,
right.
There's nothing you could either freak out and that's how you're with the right dudes. We were just like, all right, this could be it, and you're laughing about it. But my relationship with Christ was I call it half-ass. It was out of benefit to me. Like, God, watch over me before I go out on this operation. God, protect my brothers, because I'm voluntarily going to put myself in harm's way. Please protect me. I never had a full-on like relationship with him. And it wasn't until, he had to, my wife says it, he had to humble me. He literally had to throw me in a prison cell. And my wife always said it. She would say this through my whole career too. She'd say, you put the Trident, you put the being a SEAL above everything. Like, that is your idol. Yeah. She's like, you worship that. It's bred into you. Like, it's everything you are is that. Yeah. Like, and she's like, and it will fail you one day. Yeah. And she would, and of course I'm a stubborn team. Yeah, right. Like this is going to go on forever. But I had to be humbled in a prison cell, and I tell this story and in my book, and I'll tell it every time, man, because it's the most real and authentic thing that's ever naturally like happened. Is I was like locked up for about 2.5, 3 months, and this is how institutionalized I was, dude. I thought somebody from the command was still going to come save me, dude. I literally could not get it past my brain that they would do this to me, because it's like I can't. It's like one of the biggest forms of betrayal that I've ever been through. Wow. Because it's like you give your everything to this job and to this, and I won't say I gave it to the institution, but it is. It's like I'll do whatever you guys need me to do, right? Yeah. And then to have them do this to you, I couldn't get it through my head that I was like, there's no way. And so my wife on the phone call one day, I think I asked her for probably 100 times, is anybody like from the command saying anything? She just like let me tell you something. And she gave me this speech on the phone. She's like, for years, we've watched you deploy over and over. You've left us more times than not, and it's always because you said you're doing a righteous thing, and we believed you. Like, we were behind you. We supported you in everything you did. You said it was righteous, and that's why you did it. That's why we put up with all the months you being gone and this and that. She's like, now I want you to listen to me. She's like, no one's coming to get you. Damn. They are all against you. We are all that you have. And she's like, you need to wrap your mind around that.
That was a moment.
Oh, dude. Coming from her, that it just hit so hard. So I literally hung up the phone, went back to my cell, and I sat there, and I just like, I couldn't take it. Like, I physically, mentally, I just could not control and like what was happening. And so I think that's when I knew. I was like, dude, I just got on my hands and knees, opened my arms up, and like talked to God out loud. And I said, take this from me, and whatever your will is, I have faith, and I'm willing to accept whatever happens. That's either if I go away for life, or I somehow get out of this. Like, whatever your will is, I'm on board. I have full faith in you. And I tell you what, man, like the weight, the physical weight I felt come off me in that moment. And I'm not like making, like, there's no drug, there's no anything that could compare to that. And I like came out of my cell, and I had this like feeling of calm over me and confidence. And it wasn't like I was confident, like, I'm going to get out of this. I was just confident, like, I'm going to be okay no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, I'm going to be okay because God has my back. And ever since then, man, like, my relationship with Christ has grown. And I'll tell you this, like, even after all that happened, I became so close to God in that, while I was locked up in 9.5 months. I mean, I had nothing to do in my cell but talk to him or read my Bible every night. And I would. And when I got out, obviously it was like a whirlwind after my trial. Like, it was just a mess. You're back into society, and you're like, it's just a overload of everything, because you don't even have phones in there. So you're away from everything, which is actually honestly a blessing in some ways. But even that, like, I started drifting away from God a little bit, like just not talking to him as much. And I noticed, I was like, dude, I was having issues transitioning out of the military, and then also with dealing with everything that had happened to me. And I went and tried different treatments. I mean, I did the whole psychedelic thing. I did everything that, this is what we're doing to help vets, and this is what's going on, and some of those treatments do have some benefits. But it wasn't until I went back to what I was in that prison cell, that relationship I had with Christ. I talk to him every morning. I go to him whenever I'm like, I can't control this, or I don't know what to do. I mean, I lean on him for everything. And my life, since I've been doing that consistently, has been like, it has blown up, like, to a point. I mean, and blown up in a fashion where it's like, I'm not like, super successful and this or that. I am so
at peace,
and I've never been happier in my life to be like around my family. It has set the tone for the rest of my life, and I'll never stop like testifying or telling people like it is the way. That's it. And I'm not one of those people. I can't sit there and quote scriptures, and like I have friends that can do that, and they're like very passionate. I can just tell you like from personal, that's my story. That's my personal experience. So,
man, I have two thoughts on that. Number one, it sounds like your wife is one of those people laying next to the sandbags, like laughing at gunfire. Like, she's that kind of
dude
person for you.
The most savage, like beautiful, intelligent, driven.
Damn. Golly.
Yeah, she's my hero. Like, she's tougher than, I mean, and it's a joke amongst all my team guy friends too. Like, they know it. Like, if she's pissed or she's like comes in the room, guys are leaving. They're like, bro, we're not messing with this storm right here, because she's a force to be reckoned with. But it's like a pure force to be reckoned with.
the second thing I think of, so like I've been studying pride and humility just because I think it is the most important thing as Christians. It's the most important challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think pride is what made the devil. Humility is what made Jesus Jesus. And I feel like that is symbolic because those two traits that are opposites are the keys to salvation lie in one and the keys to damnation lie in the other. And I think humility puts you in a place exactly where you are ready to like have that relationship with Christ. But regardless, there's one book that I read that is called Humility, written by Andrew Murray. Like I think in the late 20s is when he wrote it. And there's a line in there towards the end where he says, accept with gratitude anything that reminds you of or brings you to, anything that brings you to or reminds you of your need for humility. And a lot of people say that, like, you know, failure is good because it teaches you how to win, and failure, you know, like you learn from your failures and all this. But like what he was saying is just like be grateful for humility because that is the most important thing that you can have that's going to bring you to Christ.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. And like I just said, I can't quote scripture, but the one passage I read in the Bible, and I forget, it's James 1. I forget. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials.
Yeah, 7 or 10 or something like that. One step something.
Yeah, that right there is. That's it. Like, man, it's life's not fair. It's going to throw you all sorts of curveballs, and some certain things are not in your, you know, you can't control. But every time you face that, you should count it all joy because you are able to you humble yourself at those points to ask God for help.
Yeah.
To ask him to guide you through, to give you the wisdom. I mean, that's on a daily basis. Like I ask him every morning, man, like give me the wisdom to be a better man, a better father, better husband, better son, you know, better brother. Like help me be a shining light in some way for you. Because I'm not, you know, worthy or smart enough to know, be like, oh yeah, I can do, like it's through you that I can hopefully bring people to you by being an example. Right. And none of us are perfect.
Because that's what James was talking about. He was talking about humility and pride. And so count those things because it man.
Yeah.
It just hits different coming from you. Like, I mean, I've read that verse. I've heard that verse my entire life, but it just like hits a different level coming from somebody that says that, having spent 9.5 months wrongfully accused and then spend 9.5 months in prison for it. Like that's just a whole nother level of humility that like,
well, that's why I count that whole time as a blessing, man. Cause it's just makes you, I mean, it's an experience, right?
Yeah.
Our life is full of experiences.
Uh-huh.
You know, each deployment I went on was a different experience. My whole military career was an experience. You take things from those experiences that can help propel you forward and better your life and also better other people's lives. But you don't do that by being I, me. Mm-hmm. I did this, I did that. I'm this awesome individual. This badass. And it's like, no, you're not, dude. Like God is the one and all powerful. And the reason you were able to do all those things was through him.
Yeah.
Whether you believe in him or not, it's him.
Right.
He's the one giving you the strength to do all those awesome things. But the second that you are like, no, it's me, I did this, you're in for a world of hurt. It's gonna, that thought process will crumble at some point. And it's also even taking God out of it. And I guess I'm going on a tangent, but like these guys that, you know, we were talking about earlier, some of the guys that come out and sort of embellishing or lying or about their career and service just to make money or get success. And I'll say this, like anybody that's out there touting like, I'm the best, I did this, I'm so awesome. Everything we did over there was a team effort.
Yeah.
It's not you, dude. It's the team. It's everybody that was around you that you were able to accomplish those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to people out there, like, if you're following certain individuals or whatever, and you notice like everything's I, me, I would definitely, take a second look at what's going on there.
Yeah. Dang. Well, I got so many questions, but I got two that I end every podcast with. But number one is you're in a room, concrete room, maybe in your underwear. What's the biggest animal you could take in a fight?
That I could realistically take in a fight?
Yeah, just like, what do you think? All right, I could survive against this animal.
Dude, I don't know, man. I think there's a big dog, like a massive dog, or like, I would say, I wouldn't even say like a bobcat would tear you up. A wolf, possibly,
I could see that.
I try and fight a wolf.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know if it would come out the way I wanted to, but I would, give it my all. But I think like a wolf.
Yeah, no, I could see Eddie Gallagher taking a wolf. Yeah, we've gotten Co Wetzel said a walrus. Shane Smith said a Co Wetzel.
What's a Co Wetzel?
Yeah, exactly. No, Co Wetzel is a singer songwriter.
Oh,
and Shane said he could take Co. Kid Rock said a possum, somewhere between a possum and a raccoon. He said because raccoons, they can get on their hind feet and use their hands, but a possum,
they're vicious.
So I said it may be a cat in my instance, but
even cats though, man, like,
but
they're vicious.
You started rolling jiu-jitsu, and you're a white belt with 2 stripes.
Ooh, that's a strong 2 stripes.
And I'm a white belt with only 1 stripe, so we're on the same.
We're on the same level.
If me and Eddie Gallagher rolled together, that it would be a pretty even match. Like on paper, that's what that means.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah, as much as I do. We can go find out. Let's throw some geese on.
Oh yeah, that's what the FAFO stands for.
Yeah.
Around to find out, Dale Brisby.
Oh, believe me, I'm a 2 striped white belt that is still learning the basics and fundamentals.
My stripe is because of perfect attendance.
That's what I think. I think that's what my well, if you keep going, you'll get a second one.
Yeah, well, because like my instructor he was telling me about the kids, and he was like, because there's all different kinds of colors for the but adults seem to go like either white or blue.
It's
white, blue, purple, brown,
or purple, brown, and black.
Yeah, but like for kids, there's like gray and yellow and green, and he was explaining just like for the kids, we'll kind of. And he said at our gym, we don't really ever even do stripes, but he gave me a stripe, and I was like, oh, because you're trying to give me a little bit of confidence like you do the kids.
Like, I'd actually rather have a neon belt. Let me get one of those. Yeah.
But the last question is just like what's maybe a motto or a saying or just a key motivational quote that kind of carried you through your entire career, and then maybe even meant a lot to you during your 9-month falsely accused type.
My favorite quote. It was, "This pain will serve you well someday."
Dang.
Sorry.
Dang, that's Bud's all the way through to the end.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah. "This pain will serve you well someday." I just added 2 words to that. Through faith, this pain will serve you well someday.
Wow.
That's that is my favorite quote.
So did you there had to be moments like whether it was in a firefight or in the prison cell where you just like you remember that quote and just laugh like, damn, I never expected this level of pain.
No. Yeah. It's something you got to tell yourself. And that quote was actually given to me by another SEAL. When I was going through all that, and he went through a similar situation, and it's the truest words that I live by now. It's like, and it's the same thing we were talking about. Anything you're going through that's hard, don't give up. It will serve you in the end. It will you will benefit from it. You will be stronger from it. And I think that's a quote I tell guys, because obviously we've not to get like dark, but yeah, the suicide epidemic that is plaguing the veteran community, right? From guys transitioning out. And I get it. It's like, it is rough. It's just, you lose your identity, you lose your purpose. You have to sort of re-navigate your life a little bit, and it can be hard. And I think guys a lot of times end up succumbing to that and giving up. And that's the thing I tell them, like, everything you're going through right now, all the pain and the turmoil and the frustration and all the injuries that you have that are compounding on top of that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and when you get through it, you are going to be 10 times stronger than you were before you started.
Yeah.
It will happen. You just have to keep gutting it out and gritting through it. And
well, I would think, like, you said, with faith, this pain will serve you well one day. To me, just an observation, I'm not saying you had these words, but it's almost like with faith and a good attitude. Maybe that's what the faith means.
That's
because
what the faith
there would
is.
be some people like, hey, I'm experiencing pain in Missoula, and it's like that pain isn't going to serve them well because they didn't accept responsibility.
yeah,
It's like this pain is because of Eddie Gallagher.
yeah, they played
And so now all of a sudden that pain doesn't serve them well.
No,
because they didn't use it.
No, they played the victim role and
Right.
and did the blame game. Yeah.
Cool. Well, no, that part's not cool. That's cool advice. Man, it's surreal to have you here.
Dude, it's
the
been
internet
awesome.
is so wild. Like, just like
Right?
not only what it did for you with me seeing your story and just the whole world seeing it, Trump tweeting, then watching and get your book, and now you're here.
I know.
Like, it's just wild.
It is. It's like it's just, the internet has made it's almost like a smaller world now, where it's easier to obviously connect with people. And
Yes.
I mean, just I watched you on Rogan. I don't know how long ago that was, and I was like, oh, this dude's awesome. And then I've seen you. I'm a huge UFC nerd. I watch and I saw you at some of those fights in the crowd. And actually, when I told my kids, I was like, hey, I'm going out to do Dale Brisby's. They're like, what? They follow you on YouTube.
That's awesome.
I mean,
So
yeah,
cool.
it is really awesome, man. And I love what you're doing, dude. I love that. I mean, I watched your content. It's awesome. You're like, but again, you're an authentic, just cool individual, man.
Well, I
And,
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lisa said Andrea almost came out with you.
She was supposed to. I was guilt tripping her all the way up until I left. But
It's a good thing.
it's a good thing she didn't, because that
Golly.
was an hellacious travel day yesterday, dude.
That's something only a Navy SEAL could endure. Well, cool. Well, we're gonna go do some shooting now.
Yeah.
Everybody, check out his book. Check out his apparel line.
Yep. If you go on theeddiegallagher.com, it has everything from, our apparel line, the Sikh Battle and the FAFO merch. And then also my main gig is I train people shooting. And that's anywhere from, I don't own a gun and I'm not comfortable with it, which is honestly the best people I love to teach, and then all the way to advanced shooting and tactics. So I work at a range in the Panhandle called Stronghold Soft Solutions. It's freaking amazing place. So if anybody out there is interested in getting better at shooting, or you want to get comfortable with shooting, go ahead and go on theeddiegallagher.com, and I have a little training thing there. You can sign up for training on that. And then also the pipehitterfoundation.org. You can go on there, see everybody that we're supporting. We have it all written there, or their pictures and their stories, and then you can donate if you feel obliged to donate to each individual or just to the foundation as a whole. That money is going to a great place, because, like I said before, the individuals that we're helping, the only rights that they have are the ones they can afford. So that is also one of my main priorities with my wife and my awesome board.
Well, I'm going to plug all this at the beginning too.
Awesome.
So it'll be the first thing they hear. Like, I'll do like just a quick intro, later today or in the morning, and I'll so yeah, they'll have all this information. Links are in the bio down below. Y'all check out Eddie Gallagher. Yeah, we're going to go have some lunch and shoot some guns.
Yeah, buddy.
Pow pow, and on to the next one.